I'd like to call the Committee on Budget back to order. It is 1:11 p.m. and we will start up with the Office of Housing.
Aloha and good afternoon. Budget Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Wire, Vice Chair Kia Aina. Very nice to see you. Denise Sari Matsubara, Executive Director for the Office of Housing. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. So we've shared the administration's mission, vision, goals for housing with you last November when we presented our initial housing plan, which is also posted on our website. I'd like to thank you all for making time to meet with me one-on-one so that we could share also what we're currently working on. As for our operating budget goes, there is no change in the FTE. It remains at 6 FTE. And the salary, the changes were covered by the Deputy Managing Director. As for other current expenses, the $925,000 delta between fiscal years 24 and 25 can be broken down into two parts. $900,000 was a council ad during the beginning of fiscal year 23 before I joined the city. The proviso on these funds was for 9 separate housing plans. I believe we explained from the outset that the city was on a path to do an island-wide plan given the office's limited capacity, the time required to complete such plans, and the cost to do 9 plans would have exceeded that budgeted amount. So I just want to mahalo this council for making housing a priority, for the high level of support you have given to me and my staff, and for understanding why it's appropriate to proceed with a citywide plan at this time. The remaining balance of $25,000 is primarily from not traveling. The next item for fiscal year 25, the $318,000 in the fiscal year 25 budget is for a consultant to assist us with the housing reorg so that there is a dedicated resource that can project manage this effort. Funding is needed for the office to proceed with crafting an RFP for the consultant. So shortly after the mayor announced he studied the potential of a reorg during his State of the City address last year, we formed a working group to look into just this. The group consisted of key department heads, mainly DLM, DPP, and DCS, as well as DHR, and the Corporation Council for guidance. Also a part of this group was the City Council's Housing Committee Chair, Councilmember Matt Wire, thank you for your time. Executives from the private development sector, Stanford Car Development, Castle and Cook, EAH, and the Kobayashi Group, and the principal of Kumabe HR for her experience and knowledge in human resources and organizational management. The group brainstormed about how best to reorganize to achieve functional alignment so that the city can be more efficient and effective at administering its housing programs to better facilitate the delivery of housing for the people that we serve. The group met regularly and formulated a recommendation to the mayor this past December. However, the timing for this is a little awkward for us because, as you know, we want to be collaborative, but we can't preempt the mayor and his announcement this week. That concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our members, are there any questions? Okay, my question is in relation to the authorized FTE. Of course, there's no change as you stated. Excuse me. But would you be able to explain the salaries increase? Is that according to bargaining unit increases?
So the salaries were covered by Deputy Managing Director, but half of that increase, my understanding is, covers collective bargaining agreement, although the positions are exempt. They follow that. The other half is for the increases he explained earlier.
Okay, and again, that's for the executive director position as well as the deputy position, correct? Okay, thank you. And as for the current expenses, you mentioned that the decrease was in relation to non-travel, right? Non-travel occurrences.
So the bulk of the decrease, the delta of $925,000, the bulk of it was from not using the $900,000 that had a proviso on it, and then the $25,000 primarily from not traveling.
Would you be able to explain the proviso that was allotted for the 900,000?
So I believe there was a proviso on the $900,000 to do a housing plan for each district, one housing plan for each district.
Thank you. Members, are there any any questions for, okay, we have Councilmember Say, followed by Councilmember Topola, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Ms. Matsubara, what would be the total cost then? Were you looking at for a study that is by districts? Do you folks have any idea? We thought 100,000 was good for each of the council districts, but how do you interpret what would be the total cost of doing a master study for Oahu?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember C. I couldn't hear all of it, but it sounds like you were asking about what the total cost would be to do a plan. So thank you very much for the question. We currently are working to bring a consultant aboard to assist us with producing a more comprehensive housing plan at a cost of $300,000.
Okay.
An RFP was issued last November, and proposals were due this past December. We made a selection. It's now going through the procurement process, so we hope to be contracting with a consultant hopefully by next month.
Okay. Then my other question, Ms. Matsubara, is this consultant going to be following the Oahu plan? When I say Oahu plan, the 9 different plans. Just that for me personally, then for District 5, would the study reflect that the study would say, or the plan would say, this is where the growth should be in District 5, Council District 5, and I'm saying, I don't know if that's a master plan.
So thank you for the question. The answer is the consultant would have to do a review of a host of literature out there.
Yeah.
The general plan, the TOD, the neighborhood plans. Yeah. They're going to have to review the most current housing demand studies at both the state level and at the consolidated level, where SMS is doing one for the counties and including the city and county of Honolulu, I believe. So it's a host of information that they're going to have to review, including from HUD and others. But yes, general plan, neighborhood plans.
And one final thought, how about financing as a part of the plan? What I'm trying to get at, housing cost is going to just increase as far as the years go by. So I'm just trying to figure out what would the plan reflect that, what would us, as far as council members, say that if we go with this particular application, this is the amount of money it may cost per square foot, and I don't know. I just bring this up for a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. After Councilmember Say, we now have Councilmember Topola, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Hey, aloha. Thank you for being here. Sorry if I missed a little bit of it. I just wanted to follow up with a couple questions. I know that for this office as well, they wanted an increase for the executive director position. So how much is the pay now and how much is being asked? I think DMD said he could answer it.
You got it? I think I got it. So for the current salaries of the executive director and the deputy, the executive director, I believe, is at $150, and the executive director is at $145.
And what is the increase that you guys are asking for?
I believe it's 5 and 10? 5 and 10.
5 and 10 what?
5,000 and 10,000.
It's 565 for the... Councilmember, thank you for the question. So we're asking to go from 145 to 150 for the deputy, and we're asking to go from 150 to 165 for the executive director. So 5 and 15.
Nice. Yeah, I do want to say publicly for the record, Denise, you come with so much experience, like ridiculous amounts. And so we're just grateful that you've been hanging on, trying to wade through the waters of city government that are murky, dark. So thank you for trying your best. It's tough. We're asking you to build affordable housing at a rapid rate and navigate through bureaucracy of stuff that you never created. So speaking of bureaucracy, just kidding. I'll go to the question about affordable housing. So, and Denise, it might be yours or it might be actually Director Crookie's, I'm not sure. In the executive operating budget, Director Kawano said that the department budgets increased by 141 million and said some of the increase was for housing and homelessness. And then when we got to the FY 2025 CIP, it said that it had decreased by 261 million for housing and homelessness. And I know CIP is for things or buildings or purchases or acquisitions. And I know operating budget is for staff or equipment or facilities. So it looks like for staff or equipment or facilities that it went up, and maybe for purchases it went down. And this could be overall, but in order for you to succeed, I would imagine that the CIP would have to remain, but maybe could you shed some light on that?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not familiar with the exact numbers and the overall budget for the city, but just listening to some of the comments and the dialogue, my observation would be that it would make sense, because a lot of what, at least for my deputy and I coming in, we see the gap being the need for more operating funds, because before you can get to use the CIP funds, you're going to have to exercise some due diligence, do the property conditions, the land surveys, preliminary environmentals, all have to be done with operating funds before you can make the acquisitions, because otherwise, you're going to wind up with the non-performing assets that I mentioned in my plan. You have Enna Road, you had Mohala Mai, Delight Bakery. Those are all acquired like over 5 years ago, and they still need to be programmed. So there's a lot of upfront work that needs to be done. And then the second point I wanted to make as I was listening to the conversation is, especially if you want to do permanent supportive housing, CIP funds is only one leg of the stool. That's a building acquisition, but you need a lot of money to operate and then maintain. So the more we buy, the more we need to have general funds to back it up and maintain the facilities that we acquire. So a lot more thought and communication with you all. We have to do a better job of communicating with you and spending more time with you. So that's why I try to set up some regular meetings with you and, let us have that conversation so that we can work together and exchange information.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for answering that. I really wanted to know how the operating budget growing on that would be more advantageous than the CIP budget growing on that. I guess a second question, and I know this is not necessarily your department, but it does fall under DLM, is we have the Clean Water Natural Land Funds that I also feel like require due diligence because we're trying to buy or maintain or do different things, and I just kind of see it stagnate. And I feel like, again, we're not building affordable housing there, but to your point about due diligence, what it means is like looking up title deeds and purchases and like that kind of stuff really is like your realm. So like, do you feel like it might be a little bit better if we had people that are understanding those portions of it? Because I personally want to see one of those projects get executed in my district and we're just not making any headway.
Thank you very much for the question. So that's why I believe the due diligence portion for that fund does, I think, fall in DLM. I'm not certain, but they do have a role. The other observation that I made, coming into this is DLM's capacity is limited. So as much as we want to acquire, we want to do all this due diligence, the bandwidth is only so much, and that's the area that I think we have to expand, and not so much just adding FTEs, because that is a part of it, but how do we use some of our dollars to contract out that work externally, and I believe DLM has been working on that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up is Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Director. And thank you for all the good work that you've been doing. I know it's challenging, but I think what you bring to the table is that against the backdrop of the task force that you guys had and any process moving forward, including what you're doing for, I believe it's the CIP funding for affordable housing and homelessness. It's always good that the mayor's office has someone who's point to kind of work across the executive branch to pull things together. So I deeply appreciate it. With that, as you know, you guys are still contemplating how you're going to restructure, how you guys deal with both homelessness and housing. And I guess I just want to know, in your current budget, are you factoring in what may be down the road with regard to moving some of these positions to the Department of Land Management? And then also your comments, perhaps, because now that we have Sam Moku at the Department of Community Services, I'm just wondering if he's going to stay there, or is it the intent to also move that position to the Department of Land Management? And then lastly, what happens to your office? Are you going to stay intact, or are you going to be absorbed into the Department of Land Management?
Thank you very much for your question, Vice Chair Kia Aina. They're all great questions. I would love to share more about it once the mayor has made his announcement. There will be a lot of work to be done. There will be a lot of consultation to be done. But before we can even get to what is the budget going to look like, there's a bunch of steps we have to take, and we have to meet with the Department of Human Resources first and legal counsel before we even proceed on a path. So I'd be happy to get back to you after the mayor has made his announcement.
Okay, but can you at least give us an inkling? Is your office going to be impacted by a potential reorganization of how the city will be managing? I take it homelessness is at Department of Community Services now, and you are dealing just with the affordable housing component. Will your office be impacted?
Logically, yes, in the impact, because if the whole premise is to try and consolidate and achieve some functional alignment, then it would be.
Okay, got it. And in DLM's budget, because you can have a plan, right? But since we're in the throes of the budget, I'm assuming that the managing director's office is working in concert with the relevant agencies to be able to have the budgetary accommodations to implement the mayor's new strategy. Is that correct?
That's correct. A lot more work has to be done to
I
lead up to
understand,
that.
but I would hate for us to, his state of the city will not be until, is it this week? I just want to make sure that that all of the implementing funding necessities will be part of the budget. So I guess we'll be hearing from DLM later this week, yeah?
Correct. And I don't think we're far enough along to say anything worth the budget yet. There's still a lot more that needs to happen before that to identify what's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina. Next, we have Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director. I think the questions that I had in my mind have been kind of glazed over, and I'm gathering, like you mentioned, we can't get details until the state of the city from our mayor. And I really appreciate, I feel that the consensus across the board and this council has been, we're grateful for you. I remember last year being here and the mayor announced that he had found somebody, but he wasn't able to announce it. When you came on board, we were really happy, and I think we've continued to be that way. And we've heard repeatedly today how housing has been the top priority, or one of the top priorities, if not the top priority. I know amongst constituent surveys, that's kind of been the top concern for the needs of our community members. But as much as you can share, right now you have 6 positions in your permanent FTEs, and I'm guessing that we have to wait to hear further any type of reorg or announcement coming from the mayor. But right now, that's what we have in front of us. So with this, and you mentioned the needs to have not just positions, but bandwidth extended. I kind of want to know, is this sufficient for you to fulfill the needs that you have in your office? And if not, what do we need to do as a council to provide for you what you need to fulfill the major tasks that you've been given?
Thank you very much, Council Member Okimoto. So We don't know just yet because an examination of the key functions and positions in each of the key departments need to be examined. And then we need to really look at all the charters, the ordinances, the rules that get impacted by these functions. So there still needs to be a whole lot of due diligence work and a lot more conversations with HR, legal counsel, union consultation that goes on before we have an idea of exactly what.
Thank you. And so for, again, I think Vice Chair Kiana kind of mentioned, because we have to at some point advance a budget that needs to be passed before the next fiscal year. So are we looking at whatever changes that you guys have to make is going to be, this will have to continue on regardless of that?
We're going to have to go through this process first to come up with a budget, because we would hate to just guess and stab at throwing money to a situation, and we really are not at that point yet.
Thank you. And until that happens, because I'm gathering like in everything with government, it's going to take a lengthy process. You have to continue meeting the needs that are in front of you. And so if we go along with what this is this sufficient for you?
For right now, we're just going to have to make do. The mayor will probably exercise his executive powers to the degree that he can to effectuate what he can, but we will work closely with you as these changes develop.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Mahalo, Chair, and mahalo, Director, for all that you're doing. And just to kind of follow up on the question, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like you're saying that we're in the very beginning stages of contemplating what maybe a reorganization could look like, and so nothing is probably going to materialize over the next fiscal year in terms of a new department or positions, because regardless of the specifics of mayor's plan, just generally that's going to be a longer process. Is that what I'm hearing?
It could be. So I want to be as transparent as I can, but Corporation Counsel still has to look at clearly what is, within the mayor's executive powers that he can execute and implement within those powers that he is given to activate some of this. So we are not at the point where we can clearly say what it is until we have that consult first with Department of Human Resources. In fact, we were supposed to meet with them today, but it got moved for these budget briefings. So within the next couple of weeks, we should have, some idea. But then again, it has to be, we have to get legal counsel as well on this.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I'm wondering, do you see this being maybe the biggest task or taking the most amount of time over in the near future? Or how do you see utilizing, the 6 FTEs that you have and just the broader housing conversation as well?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, that's a good realization, but there's other work that needs to be going on. So that's why we're really going to need the help of DHR, legal counsel, and then that's why we're trying to bring a consultant aboard for this. So should you approve of this budget, we will begin to, number one, identify a scope of work, because we don't want to pay someone for stuff we're going to do. We need to identify what's the gaps in between what we can do and what needs to be done, and then we need someone to project manage. So as soon as we get that approval, we meet with DHR and legal counsel, we can identify a scope of work for the consultant to work on. Thank you.
Okay, mahalo, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Council Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Aloha.
Aloha. So everybody on this side of the bar, I think, has prioritized affordable housing. And what we heard this morning from the mayor and from Budget and Fiscal Services Director, that affordable housing is a priority. But yet, when I look at your presentation today, we got one page here and one page on B166, and there really isn't much information about housing. So let's start with what information we do have. So in FY24, we appropriated about $1.8 million. And this year, the request is $933,000, a decrease in $881,000. So how does that comport with the idea that affordable housing is a priority?
So I think if you look at the Office of Housing's budget alone, because the Office of Housing, if I read the charter correctly, doesn't implement any programs. They're an overseeing, coordinating body. So I don't think you want to put a whole big ton of money in the Office of Housing that is overseeing, coordinating, directing things, right? Because the programs are really in the other departments. But as far as housing goes, I think beyond the CIP, and I think we have to look beyond CIP, because what I had explained to council earlier is that what we don't want to do is wind up with a whole bunch of non-performing assets where we didn't have the chance to do appropriate due diligence up front. So I pointed to Enna Road, Delight Bakery, several other IRC, right, all purchased around maybe 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and not understanding the bond covenants, restrictions, provisos, not doing enough of the due diligence up front takes a lot of time later on. So perhaps what we need to do is dial back a little bit and put more of the operating funds towards the due diligence money, do that work up front, and then recognize where the big money and big effort is being placed, because the city is playing a key role. You got $300 million that the city has put into housing, and over, I want to say, maybe 1,500 units between the Affordable Housing Fund and your private activity bonds. The city plays a key role in housing now in administering that program or working in concert with the state. So it really is our financing programs, it's going to be our policies, our procedures, beyond just the acquisition, because it takes so much and a long time really to program that parcel before you will see units. So
Well, you know, a couple years back, we approved Halevaiolu, which is on River Street, where we simply turned over the piece of property to the private developer, I think it was Michael's, and we simply told them, hey, build at, I think it might have been 80% AMI or below, right? So to me, we know the recipe. That works. You're right. You know, we bought the Road project for $8 million, I believe, or that building, and now it's empty, right? My understanding is that our backs were up against the wall and we needed to spend that CDBG money, otherwise we would have lost it. So, you know, that's neither here nor there. But why would we be investing in these types of projects? Why did we buy the Ivile property when there's remediation that needs to happen there, right? Why aren't we buying vacant property, turning it over to the developers and let them go, rather than us managing it ourselves?
I think that that's exactly what DLM tries to do. It's a long process right now under Chapter 38. My understanding is the parcels that we had, I think for Kapolei Parkway, Halevaiolu, Halewiliko, all of that, those parcels were acquired, or the work to begin that acquisition started like 5 to 7 years ago. So now, you know, they're materializing now, but the work that leads up to it, it's a long runway to get to that, just because of the Chapter 38 process too, which I believe DLM is working on.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of the affordable housing work is done in DLM rather than Office of Housing.
I believe that's correct because all of the CIP, my understanding is as an office, we cannot accept those type of funds. So a lot of the CIP funds are in DLM or DCS. DCS also has programming money.
So, you know, the only thing we have before us dealing with affordable housing is in the executive summary rather than what your office is working at. So let's talk about that for a second. In the executive summary, there's $5 million city share for such grants dealing with, I think it was Bill 7, as Budget and Fiscal Services talked about. So this $5 million, you're not administering this? Your office?
I believe, is that in the DPP's budget?
It's not clear to me. So it's clearly not in your budget, right?
I believe it's in DPP's budget. So that's because it's a DPP program, Bill 1, Bill 7, Bill 3.
Okay. And then the city's private activity bonds also in the executive budget. That's 130 million per annum. You don't administer that either, correct?
So the private activity bond program is also in DPP. The Affordable Housing Fund is another financing program. It's in DCS. But those are the two programs that we're going to try to help to administer only because of the loss of some personnel in DPP and also because to get the most leverage and the best use out of the Affordable Housing Fund, it takes some understanding of housing finance. So we will be assisting DCS with administering that program, which I believe is OIC'd over to DLM.
Okay, so it's going to DLM as well?
Correct.
You know, one of the thoughts staff and I were talking about is that at DPP, these affordable housing permits take just as long for them to get a permit than for any other applicant. What if we took some positions from DPP, put it in your office, and you administer the applicants for affordable housing through DPP, instead of DPP, but through your office? Would you be open to that?
I think, well, I would be open to it, but I would ask for your patience as we work on the reorganization.
So when is that happening?
So the process can start right away as soon as you approve the budget, and we can go out with an RFP for a consultant. But even before that, we're going to continue to have our talks with legal counsel and HR to find out what the mayor can do under his executive powers.
So I'm just looking at the, by the way, on your 6 FTEs, how many of those are vacant?
As of March 25th, they will all be filled. We have one vacancy, the secretary
Okay.
position.
I'm looking at land management. They have 20 vacancies. So really, do we want to be putting you under a department that has 20 vacancies? How is that going to work out?
We can ask DLM too.
I definitely will ask DLM that question. But, I mean, if we're prioritizing housing, affordable housing, you know, we just need more information, that's all. And can you tell us if the mayor's going to talk about that in his State of the City address on Thursday night? Do we have to, because we can bring you back right after Thursday and then we can have another conversation.
I'm not sure what's in his State of the City, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about affordable housing that the city and your department is doing?
I think we covered it, but we try to have regular meetings with the council, so I'm happy to update you and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So initially, last one, so initially your office was housing and homelessness. So you no longer do homelessness?
So our participation in homelessness, my understanding when I first arrived, is basically referring calls because there was no homeless programs. There's no programs that were administered out of the Office of Housing, period. So it just, with Sam Moku being appointed, it just made it clear that homeless now calls and referrals can be taken by DCS, and Sam has helped with that effort. But basically, all we were doing was referring callers.
I see. So Sam Oku is going to be the homeless coordinator now
That's correct.
under DCS? Okay. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Actually, I just want to add on to Chair's comments. That's a great idea, with a lot of things pending. With the State of the City address on Thursday, I would like to propose and start to pull the Budget Committee members to have a hearing next week, maybe would it be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, to have discuss matters as it relates to the budget after the State of the City address. So I'll have my staff poll on next week. I would love to have a hearing, absolutely love to have a hearing. Okay, yeah, Councilmember Say.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd just like to share my thoughts in defense of Ms. Matsubara that she has highlighted during this past 10 years she's been on board, that she has really tried to challenge the other departments. As an example, I forget Ms. Matsubara, I sent a letter in support of the amendment to the rules of DPP, and I think the members should be aware what Department of Planning and Permitting also does in regards to housing. That may be an obstacle, and that's why the proposed rules that you had provided to DPP, I did send a letter of support, and maybe you can explain that to the members, because your presence not only brings just units or affordable housing, you bring us a point of some sanity about financing. That's the biggest issue that we all have, financing. Because all of these developers come before us on all of these 201H and so forth, and now this morning we learned that the public out there should know that for these affordable projects, we're not collecting any real property tax. And it's a concern in the out years. Because as we go to our neighborhood bars, no more market housing, no more market housing, 60% AMI, 80% AMI. Do they understand what we're getting ourselves into also on the financing? That is something I need to explain to my constituents and voters, and that's the difficulty we all have. But explain to them about what happened on that particular rule.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Say. So on the rules that we pursued changes for DPP administrative rules, it impacts two items. One is the 80% AMI rent limits. These are for privately funded projects that we feel should be standardized to reflect a true 30% of income to better facilitate the production of housing. Right now, it's tied to the fair market rent, which is a standard for public housing and the housing voucher program. But the projects in mind are not entitled to HUD subsidies. So it doesn't really facilitate housing production. And particularly at the 80% AMI range, that's workforce housing. The low-income housing projects are served by the LIHTC program, and the 0 to 30% AMI is served by public housing. And so to try and make this rule serve that population as well, I think is very difficult. And, I just saw the draft study of the DBED housing demand study for 24. Outmigration has really hurt us. And my fear is that it's the workforce that is leaving this island. The other rule was the debt to income ratio on the administrative rules, where we felt that the city's role is really to facilitate production and let the banks determine the debt-to-income ratio, which was a lot stricter than even the lending institutions who are giving out the loans. So our request was to delete that requirement. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for educating us. Thank you.
Thank you. One moment. Next, we have Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Speaker Say's questions about those rule changes. Have those gone into effect? I know there was a hearing in July or January.
The hearing was conducted in January. That's correct.
Have they been approved by DPP?
DPP is working on their decision, and we will work with Managing Director and DPP on the decision for that.
If I may, Chair, I see the Deputy Managing Director here. Are those rule changes supported by the entire administration? Are we going to see these rule changes in place so we can get more affordable housing out and not let these units just languish?
Thank you for the question. So we're committed to the rule changes. It's a matter of time. We're working through the process. But yes, it's supported by the administration. And if I might, there's a series of questions earlier about what is happening with DLM, what is happening with office housing. And I do want to share that this will all be shared by the mayor very shortly, and then we can have that discussion in a more formal process, in a more measured way.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions before Chair has a question? Okay, my question is in relation to the mention in the budget book, the operating budget book, about the planners in housing assisting CORE in emergency services for, let me just read it. I had it open. Currently staff of planners who aggressively serve as resource providers and homeless coordinators in concert with the Honolulu Emergency Services Department, which operates CORE, DCS, and oversees multiple programs, ideas, approaches, shelters, and low-income housing. So would you be able to share a little bit more about how your planners do that?
I apologize, Budget Chair. I believe that must have been old language prior to Samoku being appointed. But basically, it's a referral. And staff will continually work with CORE and other departments, but it's just a referral and working in coordination with CORE if they're doing referral work.
Okay, thank you. And maybe after such announcements, then we can flesh out where exactly these, I guess, referrals or other types of coordination happens. So I'll wait for that. Thank you. Members, are there any other questions for Office of Housing? Councilmember Say.
One final question. The question is this, Ms. Matsubara. What is the process now when we acquired that dilapidated apartment on Alawai? Okay, that is under DLM, correct? Now will DLM then go out to get a request for proposal to build a 150 or 200 unit apartment? How long will it take?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Say. So I believe that 1615 Alawai is one of the parcels because the acquisition was completed that will be going out for RFP, I want to say by second quarter, but I can't say offhand. I don't have my records in front of me, but I know it's in the plan for DLM.
Madam Chair, you recall last year I was shocked when I think the developers for the Kapolei Parkway came before us asking that we approve their lease with the city. You know, what is going on? They already wanted to build. But it just stalled the project. To me, I think it stalled the project because that was presented 4 years ago. But they had to come before the council for that lease agreement. They had to sign off.
So thank you for those comments, Councilmember Said. That just illustrates and underscores why we need to amend Chapter 38 as part of the process.
Okay, I'm happy that you're telling us, look and read Chapter 38. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Tupola.
Just one follow-up, and I apologize if you already answered this. I do know that you were going to try at a more detailed housing plan. You had one that kind of was preliminarily released. When will that be ready?
So we hope to contract, depending on purchasing's timeline, contract a consultant before next month. And then we hope to see the comprehensive plan with the consultant and I coming back before you to make a presentation to this body before the end of the year.
Follow-up to that, would that plan also suggest city and state components in law that need to be changed for success, or would it just be an overall, like, this is where we're at?
Policy recommendations, policy analysis is going to be part of the scope of work.
Okay, yeah, that would be very good to see. Shoot, I had one more question. Okay, let me think. I'll let other people ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Any other questions? Councilmember Tupola also, if it relates to the, okay, Councilmember Tupola.
I just got it. Part of what we had put in last year, well, I had seen MD put in was more of a state infrastructure support of monies that match what the state was doing in conjunction with their housing plan. And I know you guys want to do like a citywide thing. Is that money still available? And I'm talking about, it was specifically for West Side infrastructure for housing. Is that still a go on the state side and we're partnering with them on that?
So to answer your question, there was, I believe, $2 million for
Yes.
each of the TOD priority areas, West Oahu, Halava Aloha Stadium, Iwalei, Kapalama. It requires a state match in the proviso, and we're working on it. Council members say, so my deputy, Kevin Auger, would you like to come up and say a few things about West Oahu? I'm going to invite my deputy, Kevin Auger, to talk about the infrastructure because he's been working closely with the state on it and the Office of Planning.
Aloha, Kevin Auger, Deputy Director of Housing. We've been working with the state to try to find opportunities where we can work together in West Kapolei. Most recently, just last week, we had a conversation about a potential road extension that would serve affordable housing that could provide a state match. In Iwalei, Kapalama, we've been working with the HCDA on a potential extension of a 25 kV electrical line to help serve not only city assets, but state assets as well. And we're also working on Halava, but that's more of a heavy lift.
Yeah, thank you for that update.
Certainly.
In my district, in areas where they're trying to build, it just doesn't make sense if we don't talk about infrastructure.
Agreed.
We don't have enough electricity. If there's not wastewater, like it's not even going to be in our lifetime if we try to build over there until infrastructure is put down.
Agreed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for Office of Housing? And also, of course, once again, I'll be collecting your questions if you have further questions for each of the departments. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Executive Director Isayama Matsubara. Next up, we have the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. With us, we have from the administration, the Executive Director, Matt Gonzer.
Aloha, good afternoon. Budget Committee Chair Cordero, Budget Vice Chair Wire, committee members and council members. My name is Matt Gonzer, serve as the city's Chief Resilience Officer and Executive Director for Mayor's Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'm pleased to be with you here this afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on our proposed FY25 budget. The greatest operational change this year relates to personnel and salaries. CCSR's proposed FY25 budget includes the provision of funding for previously established yet unfunded positions. These are existing and established positions that to date have been funded with external resources, including private, state, and federal grants. This request keeps on board 3 current city employees and CCSR team members so that we can continue the important city and community work and work that's programmatically required of us by Ordinance 20-47. Historically, we have a record of leveraging at least 1-to-1 external funding with the essential city funding that you entrust to us. This includes private, state, and federal grants in support of CCSR and in support of other departments, including personnel and capacity, as well as projects. For an example, in just this fiscal year, we've received 4 grants already from both federal and private sources, totaling more than $3 million, and we're further excited by additional pending awards and applications in coordination with other departments for potential additions and significant resources to implement climate equity and resilience projects. Increasingly, we have also been providing guidance and support to local organizations in their pursuit of grants for which they are directly eligible for and best positioned to receive directly, really trying to maximize all angles possible to bring resources to bear. With Council's support for this capacity, we will continue to leverage these partnerships with other city agencies, as well as leveraging the outside funding. As you've heard from a lot of other folks this morning, without staff, it's difficult to pursue the funding opportunities, and it is not possible to execute and manage those projects and grants once received. So really, without this requested salary and funding, we'll be inhibited in terms of the kinds of opportunities that we can pursue, and we would actually lose 3 positions that we've had for some time, 2 of which that have existed since 2019. Regarding current expenses for FY25, we propose a slight decrease, and all of that comes out of the out-of-state travel line item. And again, our strength and effectiveness really is in the power of the people in these positions and roles to pursue and manage programs and projects, and their ability to secure additional resources for citywide efforts. In closing, we do recognize that our budget request is small as compared to how we partner with other city agencies to meet our collective climate resilience goals, similar to other offices within the Managing Director's office, as we just heard. And we really look to leverage both the leadership and the other resources that are allocated to those other operating agencies to really bring to fruition the different policy statements and strategies that we've all adopted together. So with that, mahalo for your continued support, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency? Councilmember Say.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Director Gosner, what activity in the county could we create a dedicated source of funding?
We already have a sizable city operating budget, which the administration, the budget director, and all the departments look at very diligently to make sure we are allocating those resources. But we also know, in working with our congressional delegation, looking at local private philanthropy, that there's more opportunities to bring resources for this work.
No, the reason why I bring this up is this morning's presentation, and I'm giving you the opportunity of sharing your thoughts about, do you think we could use the franchise fee? Do you think we could use the public utility fee as a dedicated source of funding? All I'm trying to get at is to give you the opportunity of looking at other sources of funding. And I thought maybe for that franchise fee or that public utilities, we're dealing with utilities, Hawaii Electric, we're dealing with all of these other utilities that they're providing us with some funding, that I'm asking you think we, the council, could do something to see that a certain amount be earmarked for the office. That's all I'm saying. If can, cannot, cannot. That's all. Man.
I'm unfamiliar with the 2 funding sources that you mentioned, but certainly we already do have dedicated funding for the office through the allocation of the general fund. We know that the challenge and reality of climate will require increasing scale and scope of the work. What that might mean for resources that we have today or resources that we have to pursue tomorrow is work that you've already supported by providing us project monies, and we're excited about looking into some of the city fiscal opportunities to address these issues moving forward. But again, really capitalizing on our local congressional delegation's leadership and positioning ourselves to be competitive for bringing in those resources.
I mean, just one follow-up. I'm just so happy and elated that you're saying that, but I am of the upbringing of being very, very, how would you say, worried about the national level. When I say the national level, it's our Congress. If the funding does not occur, this county will be stuck as far as finding the resources. And that's why I'm preparing myself in looking out in 2 to 3 years. Another point, Madam Chair, that I wanted to share with Director Gonzner, when you look at our utilities, they're all at the ocean. If we have a major tsunami or hurricane, what will the office be doing, or do we go and see Hero? Okay? The next one I'm worried about too is our sewer system at Sand Island. We're gonna go to phase 2 now, the secondary treatment plant. This deals with our environment, your office. And that's why I'm just posing these questions and having you think in the out years what you would like to see as a paradigm of changing our thinking. That's all it is. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but I was never going to put you on the spot, but to get your thoughts of how we can find some dedicated source of funding, not just with real property tax, but with these 2 fees that were in the directory. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DePola?
May I just a brief response? So not directly on the funding, but certainly I think it would benefit the council and also help demonstrate the agency's leaderships if we provided more briefings in terms of the work that is being done, in terms of vulnerability assessments, the planning and the infrastructure coordination moving forward. Because again, it isn't always just going to be about needing of more resources. It's how we exercise our current decision-making processes to make sure that what we are doing will support thriving and safe communities into the future.
Councilmember DePola.
Thank you. Executive Director, thanks for your thoughts that you shared today. I really like that concept that you just said, because I think there's always this fallacy that with more, then we can get more done, when really it's how can we do more with what we have and impact, because I think your comments about overlapping with other departments, seeing how you can support their initiatives, whether it's stream cleaning or other things, that's just as effective, because then you get your initiative done and they get theirs done as well. So thank you for having that mindset. My first question is about the salaries. Is there also a salary increase in the executive director position for this office?
No.
Well, you mentioned that, you guys didn't have a really big budget and didn't ask for a lot. And I just want to applaud you, because I still feel like you guys get a lot done and don't come to the council and ask for a lot. But there will be a charter amendment allowing for you guys to have, 1/3 of the 1% of the property tax if passed by the voters starting in January. So where do you see that could potentially help you?
If the voters pass it, it'll be 0.5% out of 1.5%. So 1/3 of now, a 1.5% allocated for those 3 different funds. We'd certainly look towards guidance from the budget director, as well as working with council and others to see where we collectively could best allocate those resources. It doesn't explicitly say it comes to CCSR. All of the amendment, actually all of the funds do say it's within BFS, just that's because where all the money goes and where all the money then goes out. So certainly if the voters elect to create and establish such a fund, we'd want to be helpful in thinking through how to best allocate those additionally cordoned off resources from the general fund.
Yeah, and just a follow-up on that. I did work with one of our congressional reps just 2 years ago to try to get federal funding to relocate a road because it's built over a beach in my district. We were unsuccessful in getting it, and possibly some of that funds could be used to do that, but really we would have to draw down much more federal support in order to do anything close to relocating a road inland. There's just so much work to be done for that. Is that something your office is currently pursuing? You said you have congressional and federal partnerships you're trying to work on. Is it for grants such as that?
Yeah, so you're mentioning, big bucks, right? Moving a coastal highway, and the State Department of Transportation, we have a small effort underway on the North Shore, but they're really exercising a new effort for themselves in West Maui, and they did need to get dozens to dozens of federal dollars to support that. They're a different kind of operation. A lot of federal funding is literally just for transportation projects. We know that we can't just maintain everything where it is, and we need to find ways to better partner with highways in particular here on Oahu. They look at the same data and information that we look at. They then say, okay, what does this mean for community plans, and how do we then need to ensure that our assets support those community visions moving forward? And those are ongoing discussions.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Just a comment. Director, you already know I'm a strong supporter of your office and all that you're doing, including the positions. And now looking in retrospect on your budget versus the Office of Housing, hopefully next year we could see more funding for the Office of Housing. Because if you guys comparatively look at your budgets, I heard what the director said with regard to implementation, but both of your offices are doing a great job, in my view. And your funding should be commensurate with your responsibility. So that's all. I just want to say I support you, but also maybe later on see more funding for the Office of Housing.
Thank you for those comments, Council Member.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, my question is, I know that there's been a fluctuation in getting either grants or federal funding for CCSR, but CCSR still remains a really good aggressive office to obtain those grants as well. But where have you seen the changes or differences, or maybe are some of the federal grants not, are they restrictive, and are they not as supportive for the goals of CCSR?
No, there's a lot of opportunity and support for the work that we're doing. And the Councilmember Tupola's comment before, we don't have goals or aspirations that aren't also shared with other departments. The strategies and plans that you've helped adopt are not CCSR's work, it's work of the city. And oftentimes we're not the best recipient, but we work with to be competitive, to bring money to another department because they actually then execute on a physical project, or they need staffing capacity and support of their programmatic or decision-making responsibilities. So again, the money, it's all of the city's money in terms of how we can be strategic, and oftentimes it's better if we don't get the money directly, but we work intimately with other departments to realize their needs moving forward too.
Wow, great. Thank you very much for the explanation. That actually helps a lot because, of course, we've seen it used for CCSR and then, less so. But now I understand that it's not just for CCSR, but for the proper departments that can execute. I understand that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and with council's support, really ensuring some stability in the roles within the team right now will go a long way to ensuring comfort for those people in those positions to go after and pursue these resources in support of citywide work.
Thank you. Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Director, can you tell me where is that 19% salary increase going to?
So on the table here, the 19% includes office-wide, the union agreed stepping from FY24 into 25, and then funding and support of, again, at the start, I mentioned 3 positions that are established but previously supported by other external funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so just to add to that, Director, it's for all the staff then?
Correct, staff.
Okay, got it. Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, and Mahalo, Director. So the 3 positions that you're talking about, those are already filled warm bodies that are transitioning from separate source to general funds?
That's correct. 3 existing team members.
Okay, appreciate that. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions for CCSR? Thank you, Director. Moving forward, we have Neighborhood Commission Office, and then after that, we have Office of Economic Revitalization. With us from the administration, we have the Director, Lloyd Yoninaka. Thank you very much for being here.
After 3 years, I finally figured out how to work this. Good afternoon, Budget Chair Cordero and council members. I am Lloyd Yoninaka. I am the Executive Secretary of the Neighborhood Commission Office, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. Before I get started, I just want to also thank you, all of you, for supporting not only my office, but the neighborhood boards. I think it's important for everyone to understand that the boards are very appreciative when you show up, when your staff shows up. I think, we hear it all the time, but I just wanted to let you know, thank you very much for your support of the neighborhood boards. With that, we can get into the short presentation here. This slide summarizes the details between fiscal year 24 and 25, specific to the Neighborhood Commission Office. The budget includes a slight increase to accommodate some of the raises that were provided in 2024 and a $10,000 increase on current expenses for videography. Also, what is not quite shown here is that I know you had questions regarding vacancies. Currently, we have 16 positions. I have 3 vacancies. I would like to explain at the same time, while I have 3 vacancies, we go through a lot. And I say a lot, meaning in the last 3 years, I've hired 15 people. And when I started, there was 8. So that's a lot of people that come through our office, and some leave, some retire, some find other positions. But we are very, very active in recruiting. We attend a number of job fairs. In the last month, we did 4 job fairs, 3 or 4 job fairs. And it's just to get ourselves out there. Our positions, our jobs are very unique in the sense that the time frame for the work is very different from most departments. At least 25% of the time during the month, they work till 10 o'clock at night. So it is a little bit of a different type of job. Next slide. This slide summarizes details of changes between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 25, specifically for neighborhood board elections. As you all know, we have an election every other year. So the odd years are the neighborhood board elections. This slide shows a reduction of approximately $43,000 for our elections next year. We are looking at, the reason it's there is because we're looking to cover these costs within our own budget, within our own office. So, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members, do we have any questions for the Neighborhood Commission Office? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you. Aloha. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. I think for one of my neighborhood boards, you actually showed up and answered questions. So I just want to give you props because you're way down in the weeds with us in the community. 2 things. First off, just a thought. What if, we gave some type of award or something to the neighborhood board that stays on topic the longest or ends at the right time. I'm just saying, we should incentivize, because I feel like, recognizing the community is super awesome, because I know you guys are doing training, right? You're helping them, but I also I see my own neighborhood board chairs getting better and better every time you guys work with them. So you work specifically with our board, and then also 2 of your staff members did, and then I saw them starting to conduct better, and I just think it's awesome because all of them are just volunteers. So maybe mini incentives?
Yes and no. I think the incentive is as they get better, more people will attend. And I think that's a great incentive, because if you call yourself a neighborhood board, you really want the neighborhood out. The other thing that's happening right now is that we just got through with a training video. We're going to finish it up and probably send it out this week for our chairs. And actually, it'll go to all the board members, and even the public can see it. But it tells them how they should run a meeting. And interestingly, we use your meeting as an example. So you guys got a cameo appearance on our training video.
Thank you. I'd like to say we've exponentially improved in my district. Thank you. So I just wanted to thank you, because when you first got in, you told us we're going to do these trainings, and I've seen the application of it start to make a difference. So I appreciate that. And I also just wanted to say thank you for trying to handle these costs in-house, because having minimal costs and making it really grassroots is the whole point of neighborhood board. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Tupola. Next up, we have Council Chair Tommy Waters, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Good afternoon, Director. First of all, thank you for your hard work. Really appreciate everything that you do, and especially if you can pass on to the neighborhood assistants. You know, some of us do 6 or 7 neighborhood boards, and I can really see the level of the assistance getting really good. You know, the chairs oftentimes don't know the parliamentary procedure and what's allowable under the Sunshine Law, and the assistants have been extremely helpful in assisting them. So please thank them for us. You did already answer my question regarding training. So I think that's a really good idea to have a video that folks can watch. But you know, one of the things I've noticed is that on many of the boards, there are vacancies, and oftentimes they don't have quorum, right? So they can't really take a position on anything without quorum. So what efforts do you think that your office can do, and even what we can do to help assist in getting people more involved in the neighborhood boards and running for these seats?
Thank you. That is really a great question, because that's at the heart of what we want to do. Couple of things that come to my mind that we're going to start working on. And one is we're going to take a look at the neighborhood plan. And I think that if we can make it a little bit more manageable, less complicated, and more focused on the community, I think that'll help. I think too many times I think people see the boards and they see the infighting or the arguments among board members, and we just want to eliminate that. So that's part of it. The other part is that when we do our training, what we find out in terms of talking to the boards, they come to us at times and they want to make changes to their makeup. And specifically is a lot of the boards have sub-districts. And what we found out is a lot of sub-districts don't get filled because there's such a small group and you don't really have people that are willing to step up. So what we've done is for some of the boards, we've eliminated the sub-district and made it all at large. So it didn't matter where you live, you could still sit on the board. And I think that is going to be a trend that will continue, that eventually maybe the sub-districts for most of the boards won't work, that we just make it all at large so the pool of people is larger. But also to go back to what the whole discussion is about making the boards relevant. And I think if you can make them relevant, then it will make the boards more popular. People will want to come by. They will want to speak to the boards. They will want to speak to all of you. And our practice right now, our focus internally is we get questions just like you get questions from the board, right? I know you guys use the riser system. We use a DART system. What we want to do is that we've broken it out in terms of when the question comes in, when does it get sent out to the departments, when do we get a response, and when do we get it back to the board? And I just want to shorten that. I want it to be so efficient that if anybody says, if you got a question, ask the boards, because you're going to get an answer. And I think that helps the board become relevant to that community. And that's what I'm after. You know, I'm really trying to get the boards to be a place where the community can depend on them for a response.
No, I totally agree. And in fact, I've noticed that some of the neighborhood board assistants have even been answering these questions, and I'm sure if they're actually using the DART system. It sounds like they are. So thank you for that. I really like the idea of creating the at-large seat, because that's part of the problem. I think the sub-districts are hard to fill. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. Director, good job. I agree with you that the more that the council members can attend, or our staff, I think just the better for the efficiency of the neighborhood boards. And same for the attendance of the cabinet officials. I know for my neighborhood boards, the members are in attendance almost all the time. So just a couple of things. I'd like to volunteer my time for time management training. That's supposed to be funny. That's supposed to be funny.
I might take you up on that one.
So some of the challenges is, quite frankly, is because they're looking at the agenda, but a board member or someone could ask like 3 or 4 questions, and we don't get to the council members until 9 o'clock, if we're lucky. And so what that does is this time constraints for us. So I just say keep it up, because I think the time management is actually important for all of us. Can I ask about the $1,000 that you gave to everybody? What was the success rate for all of the boards in the utilization of those funds?
Thank you. I was going to say thank you for the question, but maybe I won't. No. That was an interesting endeavor. And first of all, I appreciate the council providing those funds. And you provided $50,000 for outreach. And instead of me and in our office using it to do what we want to do, I gave all the boards $1,000 to do outreach. In the first year, I can tell you that we probably spent, truthfully, about $135. And the reason is I think it was something so new for them that they didn't know how to utilize those funds. It's starting to get better now. They are utilizing it for projects. They walk in parades, and there's a little fee to walk in the parade. Yeah. We've also used some of those funds to buy them polo shirts, so when they go out, they look the same. We've had requests now to participate in cleanups. So we have to go out and we buy them the gloves and the tongs and the bags and stuff. We have a number of boards that have asked for support in terms of just getting a tent that they can set up at a fair where they could put their materials out and they could talk to people. So it's getting better. It's just that it didn't work as well as I would have hoped it worked in the beginning. But we are using a lot of the funds now for our videotaping. So it is well used. We appreciate it. But as far as the boards were concerned, they were not quite ready to physically do stuff.
Got it. Okay, but in this year's budget, are we going to retain that $1,000, $50,000, or do we have to add that to the budget?
That was a one-time ad, and I believe it was part of the federal funds.
Okay, we need to reconsider that. I already know for when you talk about parades, liability insurance, it's being borne by people in the community, and that would be a good use for it. I know Waimanalo neighborhood board could certainly use it. Okay, I think we get in a rhythm because we get complaints from them that they need money for this and this or that, right? When they don't like whatever Zoom or WebEx that they have, they want a different system. So I just think we should retain that. My last comment has to do with the time frame for the chairs. Again, in my district, we have really good presenters, but I think that the chairs of the neighborhood boards also need to be realistic with regard to the time frame for the administration. One of the 4 boards that I attend, I feel really bad for the administration's presenter because that individual is up there for at least 30 minutes answering all of the questions. And I actually had to talk to some of the board members, and I said, you guys, be fair. And so I think that's all, whatever you could do to help with the presenters so that people don't take advantage, and have them up there and expect at the next neighborhood board for them to answer 30 questions. It has to be measured because what that does is takes away time from the overall agenda.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the challenges, I will start next month meeting with the chairs and vice chairs via WebEx. And it's just, I want to have a discussion with them. And one of the things I want to do is talk about running your meetings. And I think the biggest thing all the boards can do is stick to their time limit. If you say you have 2 minutes, it's 2 minutes. If you have 1 minute, just 1 minute. And the challenge has always been to let somebody keep going. And I think that makes the meeting go on forever. It's interesting because part of that is the chair, that the chair needs to make a decision to say your 2 minutes are up. But they really need support from the board members. Because when the chair sticks out his neck or her neck and says, your time's up, the board members need to also support the chair. But I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see, and what we've come across is, if you say the person has 2 minutes, then they have 2 minutes. And it's just sticking to your time management.
You're right, because if that were the case, which is not the case, and that same neighborhood board, when we speak, they cut us off. Now, what they're doing is trying to get answers to certain questions, but it's kind of unfair because it's the council members to follow advisors, or like if they say 5 minutes, then 5 minutes of questions. So that is what's happening. And then when they respond, then there's the expectation that every neighborhood board meeting, they will get a 30-minute presentation from the administration. I'm just trying to be helpful. But in general, I'm very grateful for the administration. I know everyone's tired after a long day, and a lot of the cabinet members show up and they're there, they're very attentive, and so I think it's just a good working relationship between the cabinet as well as the city council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you. Thank you, Lloyd, for coming here. I wanted to talk about the issue of turnover in the office, and I know part of that is driven by the salaries. Could you remind me what the classification is for the NAs?
You mean the SR?
Yeah.
They are at an SR 11, which is pretty low. So, they're at an SR 11, and we have tried to push them as far up the scale as possible. In my perfect world, I would change their job title, and it would probably be closer to SR 18 to 20.
And I guess that's kind of where I'm going, because the level of skill that's required for them to manage their board, the minutes to go out in the evenings, is very different than perhaps other SR11s in different positions within the city. And I hope that that's something that you and DHR and the administration on the whole can work on. I mean, these are, the NAs are really the face of, in a lot of ways, the city, to our neighborhood board members and certainly to the attendees of the neighborhood boards themselves. So I would certainly be in support if that were to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Chair has well, first off, a comment. That's very lucky that our council vice chair gets to report at 9 o'clock, because I'm always at 10 p.m. So I don't know what's going on there. I think they just want to keep me overnight. Just kidding. But if you could please explain a little bit about the neighborhood board elections and what efforts you'll be doing to lower these current expenses, because I mean, we know that this happens every 2 years. So I would go as far as to say that the amount that you're decreasing is needed and not be decreased. But if you could please share.
Yes. And you're right, if we didn't have to, that'd be great. But, I think we're in a time right now where everybody's conscious about the budget, and every department is doing everything they can to reduce their costs. One of the things that we did to reduce our costs was we went to totally voting via the internet. We went to that as opposed to paper ballots. Some people didn't like it, but the cost savings was astronomical. I think people don't understand what we do in terms of our election. Our voter database is probably 500,000 people. So when we do a mailer, we mail to 500,000. However, so by going to all online voting, we cut our costs dramatically. So that has been one of the things that we've done. And at this point, I do want to give DIT some credit, because people don't know that the voting system we have online is created by DIT. I mean, and they operate it. and they have done an outstanding job for us. They are also involved in when we do mailers because they integrate the mailing list with people and passcodes and passwords. So they have done an outstanding job in terms of running an election. But yeah, you are right. We always look for ways to cut, but.
Thank you. I also want to thank you very much for all the efforts, not only just to train the members and also meeting with the vice chairs and the chairs of the neighborhood boards. And I know you're going to be making efforts to continue to do so. But I also want to thank you for meeting with the council members because that's very important. Over the last year or even 2 years, you mentioned the different changes, like such as there were concerns about keeping some video equipment whether it was last year or so, and whether we prioritized it or not, and if we did, like how we could work that out. So thank you very much. Keep that up. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now moving to the Office of Economic Revitalization to end us off for the Office of the Mayor and Managing Director. With us from the administration, we have our Executive Director, Amy Asabai. Thank you very much for being here. And oh yeah, it's already up. You may proceed.
Thank you, Budget Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Wire, and council members. I appreciate the opportunity today to present OER's fiscal year 25 budget. And my name is Amy Asselby. I'm the Executive Director of the office. All right, so our fiscal year 25 budget request represents the first year that OER is being broken out of the Managing Director's office, separate from what was called city management. Breaking us out should help to more clearly comprehend our office budget now that we are in the process of completing our first round of reorganization. So as the city's newest agency, OER has had the benefit to start up in 2020 with pandemic relief funds that have supported our programs, our positions, and our operations. This fiscal year 25 budget represents the next step in our plan to gradually move both operations and positions from SLFRF to the general fund. Next slide. Overall, OER's budget is decreasing slightly. And on this slide, you can see that the bolded line item, total positions and total salaries, are decreasing by 21.43% and 18.91% in recognition of the tight fiscal year 25 budget. However, the shift is in funding sources. So our request for general funds this year represents an increase, which you can see on the top line of each box. Again, in real terms, the overall positions and salaries at OER is a decrease, while we are shifting sources of funding from SLFRF to general funds. So for authorized FTEs, you'll see a total of 28 for fiscal year 24 and 22 for fiscal year 25. All of our positions are filled. None are vacant. Each position represents a person working for OER in the city budget. And you will see under the change title, we're requesting 3 staff positions, again, people working in the city today, moving from pandemic relief to general funds. So to accomplish our ambitious goals in the year ahead and acknowledging the tight fiscal year 25 budget, our staff is supplemented with outside funding sources. We have 2 new data interns we're really happy to have, paid for by the Leap Start program at the University of Hawaii. Additionally, our office has a federally funded Economic Development Administration Economic Recovery Corps Fellow for the next 2.5 years in our office. It was recently announced by the Economic Development Administration. We're super happy. Over 500 cities competed, and we were one of 65 that received this fellowship valued at over $300,000. I also want to note that we host a really promising Po'okela Fellow on our data team, and she will help us strengthen our economic revitalization capacity, and we think is a great thing to do to help recruit to the city workforce. Overall, this is about $350,000 in salaries supplementing what we're requesting from the general fund. Next slide. On this slide, OER's operational expenses are detailed from FY24 to 25. Operational expenses represent an overall 7.52% decrease. This is due to cuts in support for our commission, subscriptions and memberships, and community programs, notably agriculture and the Oahu Business Connector. However, again, we are moving the source of operational support for these programs from SLFRF to general funds, so this represents a net $146,000 into our FY25 request to the council. The combination of operations and staffing budget requests for OER's FY25 budget is decreasing overall. However, this slide does not account for the loss of $486,000 in PVP, so it shows a net 1% increase. Last slide. We appreciate the council's very strong support of OER. You know that we've worked to push federal resources out into the community where they can be leveraged for innovation and business relief, agriculture and community food support, job training funds, as well as the rental relief program. We're in the process of reviewing applications for a grants contractor. This demonstrates our commitment to the City Council's desire to improve OER and the Managing Director's Office ability to add revenue to the city through our successful award of competitive federal funding. So we really think that the investment you will make in OER staff can be exponentially realized through our focus on competitive federal grant funding. I like to say that our team reflects the innovation, ingenuity, and entrepreneurship that we are supporting out in the community. We've netted over $650,000 in federal and private funding to support programs and operations at OER. I'm proud that OER executed 3 National League of Cities grants for $45,000 in pilot projects in this last year, and OER will be receiving $100,000 from the University of Hawaii for the Broadband Initiative. This helps us with our outreach to underserved communities. We're going to receive another $186,000 from DBET, and we will be providing technical assistance for the state's Small Business Credit Initiative over the next 3 years. And as I already mentioned, $350,000 that we're receiving in outside staffing support. Mahalo for your consideration of our request, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Members, questions for the Office of Economic Revitalization. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Director. I know that I appreciate you and your deputy coming to talk story about the budget, but just for discussion purposes, can we just first focus on your efforts on capacity building for a federal grants team? I remember for fiscal 24, we had put aside $300,000 for salaries and 2 FDEs, but I understand that you are going out to bid already for, is it a contract? Can you elaborate on what you're doing on federal grants?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the 2 positions in funding did not stay with OER. That went to BFS for their federal grants positions. So OER has other funding sources up to $250,000 that we are reviewing proposals that we received for our federal grants contractor. Knowing of your and our interest in the way forward being really focused on federal competitive grant funding, we sought out applications for a position that we wrote up a description. And honestly, no one was interested in taking a job to do that kind of work, to do grant writing, grants prospecting, and to provide sort of like best practices back to the city for how we go after and receive federal competitive grants. People who are in this business or have done it before can make a lot more money doing it as a consultant. So we decided, let's go that route. Let's try to bring a contractor or a team in to do exactly what I said, prospecting, helping us with grant writing, sharing with our team best practices, and sort of developing a portfolio that we can share back with the council and other city offices in terms of what's needed within not only managing directors' offices, but other departments to maximize our capacity to get federal competitive grants.
So the scope will be broader than OER?
The scope of this contract is all of the managing directors' offices. I will say that we are ready and prepared. We have 5 white papers ready in the specific areas that we'd like the grants contractor to focus in terms of the seeking and prospecting for federal grants, but we are equally engaged with the other offices in the managing director's team to use these funds.
So is it $250,000 for a year?
It depends on what the proposals offer.
Oh, and you put that out to bid and then you're waiting to receive them, correct?
We have received proposals.
I'm just trying to determine what you might need for the fiscal 25 budget. So my question to you is, do you need money for the 25?
Our hope was that this money would extend beyond a year.
Okay, okay, that's okay. And with regard to the 3 FTEs, of course, I'm interested in the Pacific Islander position. I know you're using ARPA funds for that. What, under the current contract, when does that end? Ending of this calendar year or fiscal year?
Currently, most of our SLFRF funded positions are through the end of September of this calendar year. I believe there is one that ends in December of 2024.
Which one is that? And there, of
We're
course,
looking.
I'm interested in the Pacific Islander position, and as I've stated before, I have no doubt during the COVID pandemic that we needed to have a specific position for Pacific Islanders. But having said that, now that we're moving beyond COVID and trying to make this job permanent, I have asked before that the scope be broadened to help all deserving communities who also need help with regard to economic development, including recent immigrants. Now, I do know that advocates have been asking for a position to be established at the Department of Community Services, and I understand other council members are working on that. I care about economic development and economic opportunities, workforce development for all underserved communities. So I guess I'm recommending that if this is one of your 3 positions, I would probably be modifying during the budgetary process to broaden the scope of this position.
And we heard you, and it just so happens we have been talking to Senator Schatz and the other congressional offices. We've participated in all their briefings on earmarks. And what we'd like to do with this position, it is a Community Relations Specialist 3, and the titles are based on, you know, what we give them in our office. And so we're proposing, with potentially some earmark funding, if that's possible, to expand the reach to a community equity liaison with potentially some federal funding to support positions in different communities who also can speak different languages. Just Friday, the federal government put out their new performance metrics on the federal equity plan across all agencies, and we're trying to mirror some of those ideas and plans for how government better reaches underserved communities. We've learned a lot about that with the support of our Pacific Islander liaison, but even there, I think you're well aware with the ag grants, our outreach needed to be in Laotian, Cambodian, Mandarin, all languages that, while we've tried to recruit for bilingual staff, we do not have them in our office. So with that program, we actually got $65,000 of support from the Ulupono initiative that went directly to Pacific Gateway to help us do outreach that was language specific. So those farmers who were more comfortable in their language would be able to submit applications. Many of the, I believe the number is 847 small farmers that are on this island farming on 10 acres or less, English is their second language. So overall, we hear what you're talking about. We have seen with our own ears, eyes, and especially with our resource connectors work out in the community, many of our business people, many of our farmers are less comfortable conducting business in English. We do need more language support, and we would like to transition our work towards an overall equity goal and keep it broader as we move forward, so it's across all programs.
And I just want to say that, including with the Pacific Islander current one, I feel that it's narrowly tailored to the Kofa community. And I don't know if that was the intent, but we have a large Tongan community, Samoan community, Native Hawaiian community. So even without going into the Southeast Asian community, there's a lot of need.
The position was for all Pacific Islanders and has included all Pacific Islanders, probably more during the height of the pandemic than today, just because one piece of her work is the COFA Compact Migrant Death Benefits Program.
I want to talk about that, but I need to let you know, I was disappointed with Mocha's presentation on the FESPAC funding. And since this Pacific Islander position was supposed to help in interfacing with that, maybe the funds should go to your office so you guys administer the current funding for FESPAC. So I just wanted to make a comment because you have the liaison. And I know that she cares deeply about FESPAC, so maybe she can help in determining the better utilization of the $200,000. And my last question has to do with the funding that, of course, you received last year for the death benefits for COFA citizens. Given the fact that Congress, I'm assuming the Senate, has passed and will probably be going to the president's desk for signature, that COFA citizens will be eligible for other Welfare Reform Act programs, including FEMA. Does FEMA have funding now to provide death benefits? And the reason I'm asking, I know my objective was to get out the money as soon as possible because the community needs it. But if in fact FEMA might have money now that they're going to be eligible, can that $2 million now go back into the general funds?
We have not investigated that possibility. It's my understanding still there's another appropriations bill like HHS, which includes HHS to be passed, that would be a bulk of the actual federal public benefits that could be made available to compact migrants. I don't know if FEMA can go back and fund deaths that were in 2020. The funds for compact migrant death benefits as approved by the City Council do go back to the start of the pandemic 4 years ago today.
Got it. Okay. No, I just was wondering. And so, you know, I applaud what happened. I think that if they did that during the COVID pandemic, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? Because they only provided for Medicaid re-eligibility. But I am very, very grateful for them including SNAP and TANF and supplemental security income. Thank you. Thank you, and good job for your whole team and your staff.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think we have Councilmember Okimoto, Tupola, then Toba.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Chair. Aloha, good afternoon, Director. I wanted to just clarify, I know Vice Chair Kiana had asked about the grant, so maybe I wasn't sure exactly what you said. Do you have somebody in the office right now who is capable, or do you have employees who are familiar with how to do grant writing, or did you say you contract that out and you work with that person?
So we have program managers in our office who have been executing federal programs primarily through the SLFRF funding. We're still pushing out $28 million more through FY26 that goes out into the community. So they definitely have had experience in terms of writing the procurement, getting the RFPs out into the community, and managing programs. We have not, as a new agency, done a lot. I detailed some of the programs that we've done this year. A number of those were private grants that come with less, I guess, robust proposal writing than a federal grant would. So we're looking towards this grants contractor, which may be an individual or a team that we are contracting to do grants prospecting, support with grant writing and sharing best practices, developing best practices for all of the managing director's office, not just OER, and then sharing out some of the training that they do across all of the departments so that we can all become better. I think you've all noted multiple times that the city needs to become better skilled, better trained in seeking competitive federal grants. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with the contract.
Thank you. And I guess I'm trying to, there's a lot of discussion with grants and the things that you're doing. I think I'm trying to understand, if you could help me clarify, because it states here, and my understanding is that the Office of Economic Revitalization was created back in 2020 to help with COVID relief, to help with bringing the economy back, to recover from what COVID had done to the economy. And now that, for all practical purposes, we're out of COVID, we're not in COVID anymore, and now that the federal money is running out and it'll lapse, it'll end, I guess I'm having a hard time just understanding the justification for keeping the office, especially when I hear that we're doing grant writing, which you mentioned has a contracting team, you mentioned BFS, and with businesses still closing down, I think I'm having a hard time understanding the purpose of keeping the office alive when we know, we've stated before, the focus has and the concern is housing. We talked about the need for housing. Could these 22 positions that you're asking for be used somewhere else? Could it be used for the potential future merger to do with the affordable housing crisis that we're dealing with? And that's where I'm just a little concerned. I wonder if we're being redundant or duplicative in what we're doing. We have DBID in the state, and I'm trying to understand exactly what the office, it was created for a specific purpose, and now I'm not understanding exactly how it fits into that. It seems like you're being spread all over the place and repeating things that are done in other departments or other offices, and so that's where I could use a lot of understanding and clarification.
Sure. So in October of 2020, the Office of Economic Revitalization was formally established by the council via this resolution. And while it was started during the pandemic, the resolution clearly states many areas that the council approved and is in charter today for the Office of Economic Development to operate: to oversee, coordinate, and direct the activities and functions of the city relating to small business development, to oversee, coordinate, and direct the city's goals and policies relating to economic improvement projects, to implement the general plan and development plans, to oversee and coordinate and direct a resource hub for local and offshore businesses doing business or desiring to do business in the city, to oversee, coordinate, and direct economic support for areas including but not limited to healthcare, sustainable agriculture, regenerative tourism, green energy and transportation, innovation and technology, housing and redevelopment, resilient infrastructure, film and entertainment, et cetera. This is not a short document.
I understand.
So the council outlined a very, very robust agenda for the Office of Economic Revitalization. We feel like we've made a good start by taking the pandemic relief that the City Council provided to OER and pushed it out into the community. We've provided over $10 million in the last year in business recovery grants. We provided $3 million in agriculture recovery grants. We're getting out another $8 million in food systems funding, another $2 million in compact migrant death benefits, a $5 million in workforce development and training, and another $1 million in community food support. So all of these programs, for the most part, you're right, have not been done by the city before. And so the people who join our office do so with a very enthusiastic sort of passion for public service and giving back to their community. And we feel, as this work has been established, we've done everything we possibly can not to duplicate what DBET is doing and to find the space where there's gaps in support, and that we have been asked to or will step in and fill that role. And so we've been very focused on small business support, on agriculture, innovation and technology, really supporting the state with their broadband plan and doing the outreach on this island, and really sharing the feedback from the community. We have received over 450 individual responses from members of your district, all council members' district, in terms of access to the internet and the difficulties they have in getting the hardware or even being able to pay for an internet connection in their house. And we believe that is something that is vital to individual, household, and all of our business and economic opportunity development in the future. So there's all sorts of areas I could go on and on. I'm really proud of the hard work people are doing, and we really see that this office is needed. When you look across the other counties, the county of Hawaii, which has a population of 200,000, has an economic development office of 38 people. So we're not at that level. We don't plan to build to be that big, but I'm telling you that we're modest. We're within the scope of the work that we're trying to build for the city. And we feel that our partnerships, not only within the managing director's office, but outside the managing director's office, can reap benefits. And I'll just add one last thing. AMPO, as was mentioned in an earlier briefing, is doing training on federal transportation benefits. And in discussing that with our director of the Department of Transportation Services and the deputy, they encouraged us, and I am joining that training, so we can make sure that our economic development plans in the future are paired with and make sense with our public works projects. And there has never been an office in the city to do that before. So we're excited to bring some new thinking to vacant city spaces, to public works, and how we could maximize those opportunities in the future for better economic development and more opportunities for all of our neighbors.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, and I appreciate it. And I think, and maybe, again, this is just my discussion, but when I hear, you've mentioned all the things that you've been able to do, and you've mentioned the things that were in the charter, the resolution that was passed in 2020 before, many of us were sitting here. I just do, now it's a different day and age, and some of the things that were stated in there, I do see that other departments or organizations or offices are actually doing that work. And so I do worry that moving forward, even in today's discussion, I feel like this office is kind of being spread all over the place. And so I do worry that moving forward, are we going to be holding on to something that was created for a specific thing and now we've moved past it? And with our limited funding, is that going to be something that we are going to not mismanage, but that could be used elsewhere, knowing that we have other high needs of concern for the city. And thank you for sharing, and I don't disregard anything that you've done. I just feel like the discussion is going in a different direction than maybe where it started 4 years ago. So thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Tupola, followed by Councilmember Tolba.
Hi, aloha, Director Asselby. Thank you for being with us and for your presentation. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you because last year your office partnered with me to bring a rental utility relief event to Nanakuli Library. The community was super appreciative of that, and it was, of course, great to work with your staff. I also just appreciate in general, like every time they're in my district, they reach out and we make videos together and I don't know what. So I like it because obviously all of us work for the city. We want to work closely together, but your staff seems to really get it. So thank you. And also your office did help us with funding a position for through Catholic Charities for our homeless outreach. I mean, it almost seems like the things I need are just really tiny, but your office has always kind of come to the plate and they're like, yeah, we can do that. So thank you. I want to just show my appreciation. My first question was, how is how is the new commission, which we met some time ago, how are they playing a role in your decision making, and how have they helped thus far?
We were very happy to share their first year report with Councilmember Kia Aina's committee on the economy and planning. And they had an outline for priorities for the Office of Economic Revitalization for the next year. And two of those priorities, the Oahu Business Connector and funding for business incubation and acceleration, are in our plans right now. The third proposal that they presented was to get busy on grants. And so the grants contractor is our next step towards their priorities that they've established. They're a very, experienced, influential, I couldn't be more privileged than the group of folks on the commission that we get to work with in our office. So beyond an advisory capacity, they are providing guidance on how these programs should be executed, given their vast experience. And that's kind of where we are today after 1 year almost exactly since their formation. Thank you.
That's great, because I really think that their background in their diverse fields would really help, as opposed to maybe one person looking for grants. These guys all have applied for grants in different areas, so good idea. My next question was, how do we reconcile with the Office of Culture and the Arts and their and your Pacific Islander liaison? Because I really do love her too, as Councilmember Kiana said, and I think the work you guys do is different, but you know, there is some overlap there where I would hate for us to have too much duplicity. So how do we reconcile that?
Well, I hope we will be able to transition from that focus, which was a pandemic focus, in that the Pacific Islander community was disproportionately impacted in both their health and economic impacts from the pandemic. And so that position was started in 2020. At this point in time, it is important to make sure that we are able to pivot and focus where we can really see a position like that in the larger picture. And so we're working towards the transition towards a community equity liaison, where it kind of underlies all of our economic development programs and support to make sure that if it's business relief, if it's training for creative industries, if it's regenerative tourism, if it's broadband, that we're able to reach and speak to people in the places where they're comfortable and help them to access government and public programs, et cetera. So I guess that's what I'd like to say, is that she's never really done culture per se. It's ingrained in who she is.
True.
But the work is really shifting towards workforce development, integration with our small business team, integration with our ag team. And so we really see it as moving into more of a community equity liaison as opposed to one specific ethnic or national origin community.
No, that's great. And, you know, to Councilmember Kiana's point, I think that that's why we would prefer you to be spending down the FESPAC funds, because we're not talking about a specific culture thing. We're talking about how we can economically impact when that festival comes. So it's not really art specific, right? It's not like we're producing a piece of art to showcase there. We're trying to find support in the city to support this event that other people are executing, and how do we impact that? So I would agree that your entity might be more correct. And lastly, in regards to Hawaii Island, which you brought up, I did see a presentation from their similar Office of Economic, it's not called that, it's something else. What is it called?
It's called the Office of Research and Development.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I was blown away. When they did their presentation, I was like, dang, this is good. So I can hear what you're saying, which is, you know, we're trying to get to that level because they're just thinking so broad on all these economic, you know, fields of how we can support the county and bring up the the income level of just everyone and just how they network with each other. So I do think that your office is, providing that support. And I like that what you said about the Pacific Islanders, like trying to continuously hone in on the mission and the vision is something that you've really done well. So thank you for your work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. Can you restate what the 3 additional positions, and a Pacific Island liaison, sorry, and what was the other 2? Because on your salary page is 690, 244. How much is going for the 3 positions, and what will the remaining balance go to?
So our total balance, this is where the slides don't really explain much about our office. So there's actually 4 general funded positions and 1 contract position, because you will remember that there were 2 that Councilmember Kia'aina funded that were utilized by BFS. So the net is 3 positions, but the funding is really supporting 5 positions. That's 2 planners, an administrative specialist, and the community equity specialist that we've been talking about.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Council Chair Waters.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Toba. I was going to ask the very same question. So just looking at the slide that was provided to us, so SLRF, 9 positions appropriated in 2024, 0 in 2025, change in 9. So we're doing away with the SLRF funded positions? Is that how I read this?
Well, yes, and maybe if Kim wants to explain it more directly, but the net change in request of positions moves us from 19 to 22, which takes 3 of those, well, really 5 of those SLFRF funded positions and requests general funds. But because we're not utilizing other funds, it's a net 3 positions.
So we increased by 3 positions, and that's going to cost an additional $690,000?
So again, the slide is just a little bit confusing because we tried to stay consistent among
Deputy Director, can you please share your name and then for the record?
Apologies, yes. So Kim Sparlin, Deputy Director, Office of Economic Revitalization. And we spent a lot of time going up and back on and understanding that this was going to be confusing in that, no, it is not 3 positions at $690,000. There's just, it's the way that the money moves. And because there's the PVP in there, there's a little bit of a, it's a challenging way to put this on a slide. So the total of those 3 positions is $360,000.
Okay. So what's the difference?
Sorry, those 5 positions.
300...
Sorry, 5 positions. The total of the net 3, which is actually 5 positions, is $360,000, not $690,000.
So even that statement is confusing. The total of the 3 positions, which is actually 5.
Yes. It's a net 3, right? So you subtract the 2, you add 5, you have a net 3.
Okay. By the way, for the public's information, what is PVP?
So that was the provision for vacant positions.
Okay.
This is the first time that OAR had tapped into that.
Okay, so we're not tapping into that this year.
Correct.
So what's the difference between the 690 and the 360?
That's the PVP.
So you're still, well, you're saying here that you're not utilizing PVP. So you know what I'm saying, under salaries,
yes,
it's 690,000, but you're saying it really only costs 360,000. So what's the difference, which is approximately $300,000?
It's coming from general funds now instead of PVP. That's the way it's represented on the slide.
Okay. Okay. Put it even more simpler, you are going from 1,067,000 to 1,758,000, an increase in almost 700,000. Probably easier to understand. Okay.
The 690, it's the shifting from the SLFRF, so that 360,000 was in SLFRF previously, and is being shifted over to the general funds.
Okay, I see. Happy to hear that you folks are utilizing the National League of Cities because they're a great resource, as well as have you folks been participating in the National Association of Counties and the resources that they have?
We've been in 2 cohorts with the National Association of Counties. One was OER and CCSR, and we got a $100,000 grant from the Gates Foundation. We were going to use it towards our equitable economic development data building, and instead we gave it to DHR, and they conducted the equitable workforce study. So that was our first cohort that we participated in NACO, and that was really great with monthly meetings with counties across the country that were working on very similar issues. Right now, we're in a cohort called NACO Counties for Career Success. We're among 8 counties across the entire country that were selected to participate. And our partners are Work Hawaii in the Department of Community Services and the University of Hawaii, the director of the Good Jobs program there. So they've been working on how to do sort of more equitable workforce training. What we've learned in our first couple rounds of workforce development with the university is the people that were most likely to apply were those that had had some experience at the university, whether it was taking a class, a certification, getting an AA or a BA. We weren't really getting the folks that we felt most could benefit economically from this type of training. And so that's the focus of Good Jobs Oahu funding right now. But B, not only do we want to get them in the training, we want to help provide a pathway to city employment. So that's kind of the focus of this Counties for Career Success cohort, putting the work of these different and disparate departments together to come up with a plan to do that better collaboratively, no one on their own, but how do each of us contribute to more equitable participation in our workforce training dollars.
I appreciate that very much, because I know the National Association of Counties, I haven't really participated in the National League of Cities very much, but one of the things that we've talked about at our meetings is the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the Build Back Better Act. There's a lot of federal funding out there. Just wondering if your association with the National League of Cities, as well as the National Association of Counties, have you utilized those resources in order to tap into these federal funds that are available? And can we use that to pay for these positions that you currently have?
We think we need the positions to be able to go after the funding in the first place. That's the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken. But one of the primary areas that we've been receiving and expect to get more funds is for broadband. So there's $100,000 coming from the University of Hawaii just to continue our outreach to underserved communities. But additionally, all of that outreach is contributing to the infrastructure plan that the state is developing. So the state may or may not be as concerned about Oahu residents as we are, but we know there's needs in terms of infrastructure on our neighbor island counties, but we firmly believe that there's quite a few people on these islands, and we've noted where, Waianae, Wahiawa, Waipahu, and Wailua, that we've done extra outreach upon the advice of the NTIA to get more data from them in terms of their hardships in either having the hardware or having the internet access. So this is one of the areas where we're looking towards competitive federal grants in the future. There's a lot of money for digital equity and digital literacy, and the state just put forward their plan. The Oahu Digital Equity Coalition was created by our office. Some of your council member offices and staff have participated, so we thank you for that and the support in the outreach. One other area where we feel we can be a strong participant is the training in terms of skilled trades for the construction and other infrastructure building. So our money that you help to support through SLFRF is at UH, and there's a list of probably 10 different skilled trades that a person can start. For example, the carpenters do pre-apprenticeship training that can be paid for through Good Jobs, and there's also some electrician training. What we're hoping to do is expand that a little bit more as we go, but it's in partnership with the chamber, with the university, with the unions, et cetera, to make sure that whatever we're training people for is a living wage job. And the IIJA, we think, provides a lot of those in the private sector.
I appreciate all of that, and you're right. It's in the charter that this council did approve. But your department is called Economic Revitalization. Perhaps we should change your title of your department, because I'm kind of feeling the same way that Councilmember Okimoto is, that initially were developed in order to deal with COVID and revitalize, but sounds like your mission has changed from revitalization to vitalization, right? And by the way,
you could change the name.
But did I hear you misspeak? You said you misspoke or not, but you said that you needed these positions to go after federal funding. At the same time, we have an RFP out for a federal grants administrator. So honestly, based on what you said earlier, it's probably better to go after the federal funding through the RFP process and simply hiring a firm to go after the federal funding rather than doing it in-house.
So that is what we're doing?
Yeah, but earlier you said that you need these positions in order to go after federal funding.
So
you're saying two different things.
I am, because we need this grants contractor to build the capacity within our current staffing and our workforce. As I said, I feel like they've done a good job in pushing out tens of millions of dollars in business, ag, and other relief, but we haven't had as much focus on the prospecting and the grant writing so far. And so if we can get those skills from the experts that are out there, we want to build that capacity. And we don't think I hope they can learn quick, right? That's what this contract is for. And then we have those skills in-house. And we also have a template that we can not only have developed for the managing director's office, but other city departments that are looking for best practices, or even a learning lab is a part of that contract. So we're leaning heavily into this contract to kick us off and to hopefully bring back millions as we go.
Kauai County did the exact same thing. They hired a private firm that brought back millions into that very small county. So I like the idea of a federal grants contract. I think that's going to be well worth the money. So can you update us? So you accepted bids. Where are we at as far as deciding on who the contractor is going to be?
So we have a committee, and they have received the bids, and they are expected to come back in a couple weeks with their review of the bids.
Okay. Do you need extra money to pay for that contract?
I couldn't tell you. I am not, it's the deputy director that's involved in that, and I'm guessing that it will be based on what's involved in the applications and what those proposals look like. The applicants will determine how long it would take, how much to do the kind of work that they do. But we expect that $250,000 could last us more than a year.
I see. How many bids did we get?
I don't think we can say that at this point.
No? I mean, I'm sure you can't tell me who the bidders are, but you can't tell me how many bids you got under the procurement process? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee Vice Chair Wire.
No, yeah, thank you, Chair. Wanted to say mahalo, Director, for the presentation and the work that you're doing. Because I do think it doesn't make sense for us to scale down, scale up, like every time we face like a situation where we need your office's support. And you know, we look at coming out of COVID, obviously the importance of OER, and obviously just the practicality and the reality of what we're going to continue to face in terms of natural disasters. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be multiple opportunities for your office to step up. I mean, it could range from, you know, the next big hurricane we experience to, you know, conflict in the Pacific that is going to ultimately happen at some point with China and someone. And of course, that's going to affect tourism. I mean, there's a plethora of issues that we could have ourselves confronting. And so I do think, yeah, it makes sense to continue to support your work and to build that capacity. But I do wonder, as we just sift through, you know, the charter assigned responsibilities, if you could just kind of dive into how, and you've been talking about it all day, but I think obviously the underlying conversation is what is OER's work going to look like long term? And so I see like healthcare, sustainable agriculture, regenerative tourism, like all this stuff you're really working on. And I really see OER's role as ingraining that, right, and seeing how city policy is going to come up alongside state policy and federal policy and work to support these areas and support the overall economic health of Oahu, right? So like healthcare, for example, like how is city policy, or how can city policy support in that area, right? It's not just our human services, but looking at TOD plans and community development plans and how we're gonna incorporate increased access to healthcare to both support those jobs, but also access in the community, or, you know, sustainable agriculture, regenerative tourism, as we're going through like the OUO amendments, right? Like there's a direct impact on how we can support local farmers and being more profitable and actually being able to make it, right? And you're doing great grant work, but just wanted to kind of flesh that out in terms of, in my mind, long-term work of the office. Like I do see it looking at how city policy and the work that the city already does in these areas or that impacts these areas, how we can have policy that's supportive. And I hope that makes sense, but just wanted to flesh that out in the context of this bigger conversation I think we're gonna continue to have as we look at government growing and where we're gonna allocate funds and the questions that come up from that.
That's a good question, and one that we're really happy to have posed, and also happy to have the input of our Economic Revitalization Commission to help us answer. And so with that advisory body, you know, our work in this next couple of years is set out in that we need to go after federal competitive grants. We need to focus on small business incubation and acceleration. And they want us to provide a touch point, an in-person assistance for those small businesses. So especially the most hard to reach, whether that be due to language or due to geographic location or community where they're located in our island or they're from home, that we are reaching out to them. So I do think in the long run, these are things that can also integrate with other city departments. For example, the Oahu Business Connector that we just stood up. That is a part of a larger overall program with the resource connectors, with the small business connection hubs in our community, and with the website, as well as phone calls and everything else that we do, that we now have 70 resource partners that provide support to small businesses in our network. So if a disaster happens, we already have that one source of information to reach out to them from the city for hazard or disaster mitigation. We hope to get all 130 of them that we've identified on this island who can support small businesses participating in the Oahu Business Connector. That is not something that just happens organically, right? But we know it's needed because we've looked at what happened on Maui in Lahaina, that businesses need a connection. They need to understand what the city and county is doing. And we need the resource partners that are already out there in the community. The city can't be everywhere or everything to everyone, But if we're connected to those resource partners, they're going to have the information that the small business or that the individual needs. So for the long term, we're looking also at some HUD CDBG Section 108 program funding that we've been encouraged to look at for a small business loan initiative, again, for the very small, underserved, and disadvantaged business owners. They have a hard time with access to capital. Even our credit unions or community development financial institutions don't always reach them. And so there's federal money sitting there waiting for someone to come up with a plan to use it. And we've been developing our plans for that. We've been reaching out to all the financial institutions as well as the SBA, HUD, and others to understand, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think we're hitting a target audience? So we know that's one of the areas because we believe an inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem is what can lift all boats. So 50% of those high school students that graduate from our public schools and are not going to get a certificate, an AA, or a bachelor's degree, what are they going to do? We want to make the opportunity to be your own boss a real option coming right out of high school. And so if we can continue to get the support to build that through the Oahu Business Connector and some of the Small Business Connection and other things that we're doing, we really feel that that creativity that underlies our community, the cultures, the values of this place, the innovative and really the ingenuity of people will really shine through and help diversify our economy. So we feel that we should, again, learn, train, be better at competitive federal grants because the economy, as you said, is never going to be the same from month to month, from year to year, and we need to have a nimble team that's responsive and can either go after or have the relationships already in place to get the funding that we need to respond to whatever it is. Unemployment goes up, unemployment goes down. There's a war in Asia. There's a wildfire on the North Shore. We need to be able, as an economic development office, to be responsive and to be nimble. And so that's kind of where we see ourselves in the future. I think I've learned a lot from the other counties and what they do, and have appreciated just their guidance as we meet monthly and share and talk about our work among the counties.
Appreciate that. How many positions did you say again Big Island has in their office?
They have 38 right now.
Okay.
Really robust work that they're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Tolba, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. Director, other than the five, adding the other five positions, are there any salary increases that will be going to raises for the existing staff?
No, it's only collective bargaining required increases. Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember Tolba. Okay, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
No questions. I just wanted to make a comment because, I covered what I was interested in, and then when you brought up CDBG, it just reminded me that I wasn't happy with the overall administration and management of the CDBG program. So first of all, kudos for looking into the revolving loan fund. But I'm actually thinking, because I keep on hearing excuses that, we have multi-year agreements that were put in place for parks. And I do want to get a response from the administration on the time frame of when that's going to stop, okay? Because we can't be funding just the city. So as you may know, for the formula funds, it could also, CDBG, the overall funds could be used to expand economic opportunities, principally for low and moderate income persons. So I'm just giving you another avenue. I know that when we talked a couple of years ago, I was hesitant because I wanted to go to nonprofits. Well, if the city is not going to help our nonprofit community, then I'd rather it go to you, because they're making excuses of why it can't be used for housing, right? So let's pivot. And if they're going to fund city programs, why don't we utilize the whole CDBG program after the multi-year funding for parks is gone, and you can RFP it out for economic opportunities for nonprofits or use it yourself. So I guess I'm saying I feel now that it's something to explore on top of the revolving loan fund. And that's something you can have in concert dialogue with the managing director's office and the Department of BFS. So it's just a comment. It's $8 million.
Thank you. Okay, members, any other questions? Chair has a few questions. This is in relation to the NLC, I understand, relating to the 2 grants and the cohorts and participation. Of course, I am privy and biased towards the NLC. And so I know I've asked you this for a few years, but where is the budget coming from to for our participation, including OER's participation with the National League of Cities?
The council pays for the membership with the National League of Cities.
Okay, and with the council paying it, how are we engaging the council with the same type of opportunities that OER is afforded?
We just respond to their RFPs and try to participate and get the money. We've gotten to the Advancing Economic Mobility Grant and the Communities for Inclusive Entrepreneurship grants. So those were 3 $15,000 grants each, which we used for research project with the University of Hawaii to survey 600 small businesses. We did a digital navigator program in concert with Work Hawaii and City DHR to try to help get more underserved communities applying for city jobs. And the third one was a pilot program with the Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce to develop a more culturally appropriate business training cohort, working on branding and back office for Native Hawaiian-owned businesses.
Okay, thank you. It would be great to also have, whether it be the chair or whomever, to also just be in the loop with all the efforts as well, so that since the council is funding the membership, that we are coordinating this together so that we can do that.
We would love to do that, and we would be happy to share the past reports and then anything that we're considering applying for in the future. The NLC has been amazing to work with.
Thank you. And do you happen to know how much the membership is for a city? I guess that may be a question for the legislative branch later. Okay, I will remember to ask that question. Okay, next, I asked this question to a few other department agencies earlier today, but I was wondering, with the grants that the Office of Economic Revitalization are seeking or using for their office, are we tailoring it to the grants specifically? And that's why our scope of OER is so grand? Or are we seeking it because of the mission of the city and county of Honolulu?
So we don't go out and just prospect for any kind of grants. As I mentioned, we've written our white papers based on our priorities and also that provided to us through the commission's report for their first year. So we're sticking very closely to our priorities, and then we go out and try to find funding that might be available in those priority areas.
Okay. And I know that, with new programming, and we have to go out and get specific grants for that, such as business and agricultural grants. But where are the grants for our support core services that OER is seeking for anything, for public safety, for even fire or anything like that?
Those departments would apply for grants on their own, and I know HFD and HPD do seek and receive competitive federal funds.
So you're sharing that specific departments, even DTS, right? We know that they're very great at getting their own grants.
Yes.
Do our own grants, I guess obtaining grants themselves.
Yes, they work on theirs on their own. The one thing I mentioned, federal highways and federal transportation grants, so that when we are doing that planning, knowing that it's a very complicated and lengthy process to apply, receive, and then execute those funds, we want to be able to better integrate economic development planning with the public works projects. So vacant city retail and other property spaces is with the Department of Land Management. So we've been trying to find some more economic development uses for our vacant retail spaces that the city owns currently in Chinatown and would like to lease out.
Okay, thank you. I'm very disappointed in the direction that the MOCA, Mayor's Office in Culture of Arts, is going. And I would like to see, I know that with the growth of OER, maybe we could be looking or redirecting either the staff or the programs to either support the programs that are currently housed in MOCA to be supported by OER instead. I come from the time. That sounds so weird. That sounds so weird. I started the city in 2012, where we had the Office of Economic Development. Right, the film office was there. Our sister cities were there, and we really focused on not just culture, but also like economic development and partnerships between that would really boost such economic development. And I think something like FestPack, I think that was mentioned earlier, is something that we could maybe, I know it's probably already too late, but really needs to be reconsidered by the city administration to see if MOCA really should have it fit under their purview, whether it be the events, those types of events, and even the sister cities. So I'm very disappointed, not only with the growth of OER, but especially with MOCA and seeing that. So I just really wanted to share that. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So OER is flat in terms of our request for staffing. Again, we are not requesting more staff. Our positions are filled, right? They're people that have been working in our office. They've just been funded by a different funding source, and we're requesting that you consider shifting them into general fund. So we are technically not growing. We are flat, and even actually decreasing if you look at the real net numbers. That said, our staff is working with MOCA on FestPack. Our Pacific Islander liaison is the city's liaison to the FestPack Commission. And so she relays what's happening on the commission meetings to the Mayor's Office in Culture and Arts, and has a good partnership in terms of the information that we're receiving and turning it into action plans for the city. So the Va'a arrival out at Kualoa Beach Park, as well as, I guess some people are going to be residing out there for their tenure during FestPack, that is a part of the city's support. And we can only respond to FestPack requests as we receive them. We can't make them up, right? And so the FestPack Commission, when they provide us requests for city support, that comes through the commission member in our office and is relayed to MOCA, who does what's known as cultural city co-sponsorships. OER does co-sponsorships that lean towards economic development, and they do city co-sponsorships that lean towards culture and the arts. And so FestPack is one of them, and that's why they've been designated with the 200,000, and I think that is the right place to keep it.
Okay, or maybe absorb MOCA. I don't know. That was really disappointing today. Okay, yeah. Members, any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Director. Next up, members, we will move forward to Department of Budget and Fiscal Services, our 10th agency for today. I know we did 10. Hey, members, I do have a question. I know that BFS is a very important department for us. I will announce later that I'm going to be recessing till Thursday, starting with our HFD. But I just wanted to know, to poll everybody so that I could also determine if I'm going to release Emergency Services Department. Just want to know how everyone is planning for their BFS. I know BFS, once again, is very, may also be lengthy.
If I may just chime in, Chair, I think the inclination was try to wrap up between like 5:15-ish.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So, with whatever? Okay. Well, follow lead, okay. I guess we can say all public safety agencies can go on Thursday then? Is that okay, guys? Okay, thank you. With that, before I get to the budget director, I would like to thank HESD for being here. I really appreciate you folks. If you could please come back on Thursday. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, budget and fiscal services led by I'm sorry. Director Andy Kawano, excuse me.
Thank you, Budget Chair, Council Chair, and Budget Vice Chair, Honorable Council members. For the record again, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. We also have our staff, our leadership staff, Carrie Castle, our Deputy Director, Nancy Abele, our Chief Accountant, Shelley Oy, our Budget Administrator, Connie Kaneshiro, our Fiscal CIP, Long Range Planning Administrator. I see John Tamanaha here. He's our Internal Control Division Administrator. Kelsey Imamura, our Purchasing and Contracts Administrator. Stephen Takara, our Real Property Assessment Administrator. Nancy Pune, our Acting Assistant Chief of Treasury. I don't see John Hashimoto, and then next to me, Jennifer Bishop, who will be assisting with the presentation. So we'll get rolling. First slide. First slide presents BFS's expenses. The top box excludes liquor. We're going to focus on that one, excluding liquor. So essentially, if you go to the BFS budget in the budget books, our total budget is $33.5 million. If you take out about $5 million, which is related to liquor, and liquor is a special fund. They operate on liquor fees and other revenues. The budget we'll be working on today is about $28.5 million. About 85% of BFS's budget is general funded. And then we have smaller amounts of community development funding, federal grants funding, some sewer funding, and some housing development special fund funding. But all of those amounts are very small relative to the general fund funding we receive. With regard to our budget issues, as you can see, with regard to the change, our salaries are increasing in relation to the collective bargaining agreement increases for FY25, and our equipment increase is fairly nominal. We have a larger increase in current expenses, and I'll cover the breakdown in the next couple of slides. So in slide 3, under Accounting and Fiscal Services, headed up by Nancy Abele, we are requesting in Mayor's proposed budget salaries of $109,500, $58,296 for one FTE Accountant 3 to assist with the additional reporting requirements related to Skyline, which we believe is important, and then $51,216 for an Accountant 4 to support the remainder of the FRF grant administration. We're thinking that we'll do a personal service contract for that one to start, and then feel our way through FRF as we wind it down, probably through fiscal 2027. In current expenses, we're requesting $152,000 to upgrade our property tax platform for the real property assessment. Oh, excuse me. Wrong one, I'm ahead of myself. The $152,000 in current expenses is an increase under accounting and fiscal services to help to augment our payroll processing services to the rest of the city. We're looking at expanding our engagement of CGI, which is our ERP platform consultant, and pay for more services from them such that we'll be able to address more complicated payroll reporting, data evaluation, and conducting quality control processes. We view payroll as important, and we are requesting the additional amount through Mayor's proposal to improve payroll processing going forward. Then, with regard to purchasing and general services under Kelsey Imamura, we oversee the relocation process for properties that we acquire that require the relocation of tenants. One significant property that we acquired that has over 30 tenants is the Iwalei Center property. We have essentially, a combination of commercial tenants, nonprofit tenants that are there that have to be relocated, and we are required by law to assist in the relocation process. So the $500,000 involves engaging a consultant to help us with the relocation process, and the fees that the consultant charges can range depending on how complex the relocation is, from $20,000 up to $30,000 per tenant. And the last area is for the real property assessment system, and this is the $150,000 we're requesting for an enhancement to move our real property system onto the cloud. We are currently our local service-based system platform using the same vendor. We're having processing issues, and we're taking much longer of amount of time to process reporting runs. And we have a situation currently where the server shuts down and we have to reboot the server several times doing processing jobs. And it's something that we don't want to have to deal with because we're risking processing the assessment process, billing and collection of our most important revenue source, real property taxes. And we are recommending that we move to the cloud, upgrade the platform, move to the cloud, and other counties here in Hawaii have done that already. So they've actually already moved to the cloud, and we're hoping that we have much more stability based on their experiences. With regard to vacancies, as I mentioned earlier during the executive overview, we've been working very hard to fill vacancies, but we've kind of stayed put. So currently, as of the 1/31 January 2024 cutoff, we have 68 vacancies. Since January 31 through March 11th, we've had 8 hires, but we've also had 6 positions vacated for various reasons. The plan is to continue hiring. We need the budget to hire because we want the positions that we hire budgeted. And we are targeting 44 positions through July 2024 that we're going to hire. As I mentioned, we're in the process of actually filling 8 positions currently. And the remaining 16 positions to be hired, we're hoping to hire based on our target for next year. And that assumes that we can retain. The big challenge we've had is retaining employees. And we've had situations where we train new employees. They find other opportunities within the city a lot of times that pay more, and they move, they transfer to other positions. And that has continued, so we're hoping that we can slow that process down. There are a number of employees that we have that are federally funded and vacant. We are in the process of doing the analysis to determine if those positions are going to be needed long-term. But we still continue our focus on filling those positions as well. But we have not had success filling those federally funded positions. So with regard to overtime, we were asked to break down overtime by department, and the current slide shows a breakdown of department overtime. For FY25, we forecast or budget approximately 3,462 hours of overtime, and the budgeted dollars amount to about $172,500. In terms of how we break down the hours of projected overtime for FY25, we project the most in the Real Property Tax Department at 1,920 hours, followed by the Accounting and Fiscal Department, 930 hours, followed by Purchasing at 260 hours, and then budgeting at 200 hours, and then lastly, fiscal CIP at 152 hours. With regard to real property assessment, real property assessment is our largest department with, I believe, 104 budgeted positions. We need to pay overtime to ensure that we process thousands of tax relief program applications and update thousands of ownership records in short periods of time for the assessment process. Okay, in terms of revenues that Budget and Fiscal Services are responsible for, these list of revenue items follow what I covered in the overview. There's one difference though. In the FY24 column, we're including not what was appropriated, but our best estimate as to what we project to collect or realize for FY24. So the numbers are slightly different, but in terms of change, in terms of fluctuation, there is a difference with regard to the overview because we've included the investment pool revenue. And because interest rates have gone way up, as our bond investments mature and we convert investments into cash, roll them over again, reinvest it, we've been having very good results so far this year. And as a result, we're projecting out, a larger number than was budgeted for last year. I believe we budgeted about $60 million or so last year, and that's the amount appropriated. But it looks like we're going to collect about $78 million. As you all know, because the economy has remained strong, there's a likelihood that the rates will come down. And it looks like after the meeting this week with the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank chair, it looks like there's going to be pressure to move rates down as we move towards the end of the fiscal year and move into next year. So for 25, what we've budgeted is an amount more along the line of a typical year, going back pre-COVID, in terms of what we've owned in a time where, interest rates are expected to, decline as we work into FY25. So we brought that down a little to be conservative to some extent. We don't want to project high amount of revenues, not hit it, and not be able to fund our budgeted obligations. Therefore, we believe that about $25.8 million for next year is a good number for the investment pool. We also have been spending down all the federal monies we've received for COVID, and the investment pool will be what we earn essentially on city revenues collected, and a lot of that is real property tax. With regard to budget and fiscal services CIP, relative small amounts. We're responsible to fund the skin in the game contribution to rail construction. So the required scheduled amount per the full funding grant plan is $10 million, and that amount we're gonna continue to fund an amount close to that number, and I think we have about $60 million to go in terms of funding rail. The total commitment the city made to fund rail was $216 million, and we're well beyond the halfway point. We're pretty much winding down funding for rail construction at this point. With regard to procurement of major equipment, we're responsible for the city general fund equipment purchases across government, and the amount funded for this year is $10,777,000, split between general funded purchases of equipment and highway funded purchases of equipment for highway maintenance. And then lastly is the placeholder for project account adjustment that hasn't changed from the prior year. It's the same amount we budget as a placeholder. So with that, I, with the staff here, will take questions from council members. Thank you.
Okay, members, are there any questions? Okay, we have Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair, and Mahalo, Director, for the presentation. And I'm just curious, in looking at both accounting and fiscal services, and then also purchasing, because I know that there's often a conversation about what type of in-department support a particular, of course, non-BFS department should have on the purchasing side, on the fiscal officer side. And I noticed it doesn't seem like you actually have too many vacancies in regards to accountants and procurement specialists. I mean, there are some, but it seems like you're pretty full on that side. And so I'm just curious on your thoughts about whether, in terms of speeding up processes would mean adding more positions to BFS on that side, on the fiscal officer side, on the procurement specialist?
Good question, council member. I think it's going to take a combination of filling our vacancies.
Okay.
Because even for purchasing, it's a smaller department within BFS. We have about 300, if you exclude liquor, we have about 325, 330 positions.
Yeah.
Of that, purchasing is about 34, 35.
Yeah.
And we have 8 vacancies, as of the cutoff. That's still a 23.5% vacancy rate.
Okay.
Now, the eight vacancies include the 4 added positions we put in last year. And we wanted to bring in 4 mid-level staff to assist with, training, purchase program development, working to improve efficiency, that kind of stuff. So those positions were just created, and we're in the process of filling them. I think we're closer to filling one of those 4 positions that I was talking about, but we're still recruiting the other 3. And then we have 4 other vacancies on top of that we have to fill.
Okay.
So your question is a good one, though, and we're going to be looking at different strategies, in terms of filling positions, and we'll be taking a look at perhaps our sections. We have 5 that process procurement needs, of the city, and we've been talking about, do we really need 1 more? And we'll see how we go with hiring the 4 positions we added, but depending on how it goes, we may make some changes and look at using savings to maybe add a section.
Okay.
Yeah. At the same time, we're discussing technology changes that can be used to take some of the manual steps out of the process, and we're just looking at the entire process in general to be more efficient.
Okay. Yeah, because again, of course, you probably have more updated numbers. It seems like the level 4 has the most vacancies, but then the other ones are like 1 or 2 per level. I don't know what the most important is in terms of the purchasing process. I know everyone's playing an important role, but
I think purchasing is very important, for the city, and we've been getting a lot of good feedback from departments, across the city on how we can be better. So we're taking it in and we're having meetings, and I think what everyone has to realize is that it's a process. So we have laws we have to comply with, but obviously there are situations where we can do things differently, to reduce the amount of friction we have, in terms of getting things out. But it's work in progress. There's no real easy solution.
Of course.
I think it's a combination of adding capacity and improving technology in that area.
Yeah, because that was my question. I know everyone's working hard, and so it's really just, is it a filling vacant positions issue or adding more positions issue? And it sounds like you're saying you need to fill the positions that are vacant and maybe are assessing potential additional positions?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that insight. And then second question I had, because I know it's come up a lot today in terms of the federal grant support and with OER, and then earlier Deputy Managing Director, and I think also OER had mentioned how BFS had the additional positions to support on that front. And so I was wondering if you could just provide a little bit more insight into what that process is looking like and how it's working for the departments.
Well, I'll speak in terms of BFS. So we have under our administration division 3 staff. One's on maternity, so there's 2 FTE. They operate the H&L grants platform, and it's powered by a company called Stralto. So they're doing that right now. So all of our grant, right now, there's no new requests. So essentially, we're amending grant applications from time to time to shift funding, within a grant program, let's say. We're doing closeouts. We're doing reporting. We have to do quarterly reporting. We're doing self-auditing. So we're capturing information before we do the quarterly reporting from all of the grant administrators that are actually using FRF funding to find out where they are in their projects. Because at the end of the day, we're running out of time. And if we don't obligate the funding by 12/31/24, the money has to go back to Treasury, and we don't want to send any money back. So they're focusing on that, but at the same time, they're not dumb. They see as to what's going on with regards to the program. It's winding down, so they're looking for opportunities within the city and talking to other departments to find out, after FRF, where do we go? They're working with certain departments to try to get some infrastructure applications processed for projects like, fixing bridges and things like that. But what we're finding out is that it's very specialized, and they don't understand the technical aspects of seeking that kind of funding and not really providing the technical support that DDC may need. DTS, they're pretty good. They have their own in-house technical expertise, but some of the other departments need more support, and I think that's why we're considering going out to engage a consultant to help, in those areas, because we're talking big dollars in terms of infrastructure spending and funding available. So that's what's going on. So there's some change happening. They know that FRF is ending. They're looking at, okay, where do I fit in next? There's some of that going on.
Okay, and when you say fit in next, you're talking about both scope of work that they're looking for, but also where they potentially could be working.
Yeah, because the sense I get is that they want to remain with the city, which is good.
Yeah.
They've stabilized a lot of system issues that we've had with Stralto, but they realize that they're in processing mode to wind down FRF, and they're kind of thinking, where do we have a home here? Do we have to look around for employment elsewhere? So we're going through that process right now, working with the staff, and trying to find a place for them where they can contribute and be successful and feel good about working in the city because they want to remain here.
Okay. Given, and this will be my last question, then I'll pass it on, Chair. I'm just curious if, in your experience then with this program so far, if it's, your perception that it's better to have like just in-house grant seekers and appliers in each department, because I'm thinking like you have the big transportation grants.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as
It's
like,
very specialized.
Yeah,
It's a very specialized endeavor, and I think it, coming into the city, the pie in the sky was to have everything centralized, and that sounded good. Systems, people, right, process. But looking at it now, it's so specialized. Perhaps maybe if we can all get on the same system, software system, but have disciplines and talent in departments that need it, might make sense to help with the application and management process. I think that's the challenge. It's so technical, so specialized that people have a hard time, and then they have their day-to-day work that they have to do. So that's the challenge, the capacity and capability to get those applications done and compete to get more federal grant monies in. Okay. So I understand that MDO is going to probably engage a contract with a consultant. Makes sense.
Okay. No, I appreciate that insight. And thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha again, Director Kamano. I wanted to kind of go over page 8. I know you had the revenue estimates. And I know this morning earlier, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam had asked about the fuel tax and that decrease. And you had mentioned that you're working with the state because of everything shifting to EVs now and
for the fuel tax.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
Right.
So are we looking at, and maybe I'm not sure if you can answer this because I know that on the state highway, I mean, right now we have a lot of, I'm not sure if they're exemptions or tax credits or things for the EV. So are we looking at changing that because those cars are heavier and they do put more wear and tear on the roads? Is that what we're looking at as we slowly go away from?
So right now, I have to be honest with you, we're not driving the process. It's the state. And so we have group meetings every now and then to talk about, okay, where can we go with regard to taxes for vehicular travel. So it's an ongoing process. There's no target date in sight right now as to when legislation will be proposed, to change the way fuel taxes are collected, taxed and collected, but it's going to happen.
I understand that it would have, you're
there's
working with the
chatter
state,
out
and it would
there.
have to come from the state. I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to recover these losses and the potential losses coming
Well,
from
one
that.
thing we're going to look at working with the Office of CCSR is that they are, like private entities, governments can apply for credits. So we're going to have to work with them after we get further through budget, because that's been our focus, and look at, as we buy energy saving equipment, as we make investments in like charging stations and all of that, where are the credits? CCSR has information where the bigger dollars are, but we can make up some of the lost collections there. We're talking millions of dollars over time.
Okay.
Because we're going to be investing a lot of money
Yes.
in electric vehicles, buses, handy vans, charge stations, solar panels, that kind of stuff. So
I think that's good to point out that as we go further, and that's the direction that the state is going to, like you said, we have to look into, because there are consequences. I mean, so I'm trying to figure
we're
out
going to
how we
have,
as a city,
we're going to have to pivot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
pivot
I
away
think
from
it's good to be
fuel-based
mindful of
travel.
that as legislation is being created, that even though it seems up front to be the answer to all, that there are things that we have to figure out because of that. The second question was just the next item on there was the 53 million for the investments pool. Could you explain that to me? What exactly is the investments pool and what happened there with the huge decrease?
So our treasury has cash balances in various funds. Every day, all the cash gets put into a pool, all of the free cash. As investments are made and as investments mature, the cash comes out and gets reallocated back to the various funds. So we're all in, generally speaking, in the investment pool to earn investment income. And the numbers you see are just estimates. We feel pretty good about FY24 right now, but things can change quickly, right? Interest rates can change quickly. If yields go down, because we're the investor in these cases, our investment income will go down. On the flip side, if for some reason yields go back up, we could earn more. So it's a number we're forecasting for this year. For next year, because the plan is to lower interest rates, typically the yields go down along with that. Therefore, we're trying to not be too aggressive for FY25 to ensure that the monies we budget are actually collected, are actually realized and collected, so that we can pay our obligations. We can make good on our obligations.
Okay. You mentioned, you said for this year, this fiscal year, and you anticipate it being positive, but the forecast for the fiscal year 25 it'll be.
We expect that expect a more significant decline for 25.
And do you have, does the department have plans on, how will we recoup these potential losses?
Well, what we're looking to, and we talked about this last year, and we weren't able to successfully hire the investment consultant this year. So we're looking at hiring a consultant to help to increase our earnings. The consultant that we were going to hire, or that we selected, that we were working to hire, couldn't pass Hawaii Compliance Express. They had an issue, federal tax issue that they couldn't clear, and we went back and forth with them probably during the fall of 23 for a while. I'm talking a few months. So we finally had to cut that procurement and redo it. So we just reposted. So we're hopeful that by the start of next fiscal year, we'll have somebody on board. The company that we're working with actually consults with the state right now. But for some reason, at the time we were doing the procurement, they couldn't pass Hawaii Compliance Express.
24, 93,865,000.
Yeah, and we're proceeding cautiously, Vice Chair. We, if Maui starts the process in a bigger way to recover, And if there's more international travelers, primarily the Asian group, the Japanese group that
Yes.
we've lost, if they come back, yes, I would say that
Okay.
in 26,
Okay,
when we do the
no
forecast, we
problem.
can forecast it up.
So based on the 8.34% of a percentage of this amount for the impact of visitors on public facilities and natural resources, do you have a breakdown for how those funds would be used in the budget?
Yes, actually, Budget Chair asked, she provided a budget communication that we've responded to, so we've broken all of that down. So you can,
Okay.
you'll have that information.
And of that amount, how much is going to the Department of Parks and Recreation?
Most of the monies are going there.
Oh, good to hear, good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, on the federal grant system team, I'm glad OER had to remind me that the funds were used at your office. So I get confused because there's so much going on. So give me an update on your federal grants team, and also then to continue the momentum, will additional funds be needed for the fiscal 25 budget?
So, yeah, I covered that with Councilmember Wire. So right now, we're down to 2 FTE, with regard to the team that we have under BFS. They're both personal service contractors. So, and they're both funded through September 30, 2024. And we did that. We didn't fund contracts for contracts for personal services because we wanted to make sure that we can spend on the funds. So we've generally cut most of them off at September 30, 2024. We're going to do an assessment to see if the services are needed through 12/31/24. The two employees have been working on things like they just completed cleaning up the final. Completing the final phase of Stralto improvement so that we can process everything through an automated process using their cloud services. So that's all in place. We've been notified by the city auditor of a full-on audit of FRF, of the ARPA program. So they're working with MDO right now to prepare for the audit. The city auditor has made audit selections, and they're pulling all of our approvals, all of and of grant applications, the projects, all amendments, all in one file, one place, one portal.
But are they experts in helping us get money?
They're not. They're not experts in money seeking.
Okay, so I don't want to prolong because I know other people have questions. Okay, I'm just trying to better understand then.
Yeah.
So my third question then is, and you and I have discussed this a while back, I do believe that the city should retain a lobbyist representation in Washington, D.C. To work with all of the other staff and entities that we are building within the city, but could also work with the mayor's office. And as you know, because right now agencies are fighting on their own. So there's federal formula funds, right, automatic. There's the discretionary funds, and that's not just through the annual appropriations process, it's through the multitude of bills that have been passed where there's billions of dollars at stake. And then lastly, there is the earmark process of our Hawaii delegation. And so I think that, because we don't have representation in DC for the city and county of Honolulu, is that correct?
I don't oversee that part. I think that's something that MDO should answer. I don't handle that.
But okay, I will work with them on it because I'm considering an amendment. So the question is whether it goes in the MDO's office or where it goes in yours office. And I'm looking at $240,000. The rate of return, I'm quite confident, will already, the return on investment will be secured by retaining an individual. Hart has one, Mr. Dwyer. He's excellent. we don't have one for our whole executive branch, but we have one for Heart. And so I guess I'm trying to tell you that the amount of money we spend for them will be well repaid with the rate of return in securing funds. And that would be to make clear of the priorities by the mayor. And I know everyone is doing that now, but it's kind of uncoordinated. And I think that we could do a better job. So that's all. I just wanted to flag that for you and look forward to updates on your federal grants team.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Tupola, followed by Council Chair Waters, followed by Councilmember Say.
Aloha, Director. Welcome back. Glad to have you. A few questions, some of them pertaining to your slides and others just because, you know, you're the budget and fiscal guy for the city, so you know all the answers. My question was, you know, we're talking about affordable housing in and out of all of our departmental discussions, and there's one very small admin rule that has to do with qualifications for individuals to be able to receive affordable housing. I'm just going to read it to you because you talked about interest rates and loans, so I think you know the answer to this one. Just a little quiz. So it says, eligibility requirements, affordable for sale housing units. Currently right now in the city, we require that applicants must meet this bar. They must have sufficient gross household income to qualify.
It sounds like something that should be going through some kind of loan review process. What program are you looking at, if I may ask?
Yeah, so in the, they're just the affordable housing admin rules. One of the suggestions in a January hearing, which we're waiting to hear back from DPP, suggested that we strike that, stating that that requirement shouldn't be codified in rules, but rather a loan officer or a bank that's executing the loan should be the ones determining that portion of it, and that we should just be giving the affordable housing based on if they have a loan or not if, you know, we measure if they only spend 33% on. I'm not sure who in the city, probably DPP is the one verifying these, but I would imagine that this is more for a bank and not for the city to determine.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I don't think there's a BFS program that requires those, that kind of analysis.
That's great.
Specifically.
So basically you would support striking that and allowing banks to figure that out so we can just give out affordable housing.
I think if DPP is at point, whatever they recommend, we would be behind as a administrative team.
Thank you. We just really want people to have access to affordable housing, so I'm all for striking things that are unnecessary. Next question is spending down CGBD funds. I've had this discussion with DCS, and then I had it with the Office of Housing, which everyone kind of circled me back to you. So how much CGBD funds do we have left until June or July of this year to spend down?
CDBG funding?
Yeah.
There's a lot to spend down.
So
there's probably about $7 million to spend down.
So I was told, oh, 7 is interesting. Someone told me 2, then another person told me 15, so let's go with 7. So when I talked to one of the departments and asked, you know, how do I decide or put my hand in line to say my district would like some of these funds? This is what I was told. By December of a fiscal year, if there has not been allocation, that in January, if the CGBD funds were not encumbered, that we can kind of get in line and try to see if we can get it for our district before they lapse. Is that true?
That's not true.
So tell me how it happens, because I want to know.
So what we're going to do, actually, we should look at the bigger picture. So we're in the final year of a 5-year consolidated plan period. So for fiscal year 26, which is program year 25, for that year, we're gonna have to do a 5-year consolidated plan for CDBG. And I think at that time, working with council members, because we're gonna have to present the plan to you, we'll be deciding on what our joint policies are, what kind of governance we're gonna have over CDBG. And I've been hearing that, and internally, as well as from council, that we have to stop doing long-term, multi-year park projects. I agree with that, but that's what the administration committed to, with the last plan, unfortunately. We thought we would be able to do better, on a go-forward basis at that time compared to nonprofits. But that hasn't been the case. And, I'm not making any excuses. I'm just telling you fact. If we look at the results, we're not doing it as a team. So I think we're going to have to change what we focus on in the next 5-year plan. And then every year we do a plan. There's a plan that follows the 5-year plan every year. So BFS does the overall administration and reporting for CDBG. So we send out in the fall an email to all of the departments, asking for requests for projects. And council members that are interested, we have discussions with them as well. So that's typically what happens. So we send out a request for funding, and the request is responded to. We
Thank you.
combine everything together and we run it through the MDO office for review. After that review, we go through HUD to ensure that HUD approves the types of projects that we're looking at, HUD local office, and then we go through council for your approval.
So follow-up
So
questions.
we're going through the process right now for FY25.
I guess a follow-up question when you said we send out an email to departments and we
Memorandum.
also discuss with council members. So council members just call your office and say, hi, I want to discuss if I can get in line for CGBD?
Either that, or you're already talking to directors like Director Thielen for parks, as an example. And because she oversees all parks, if you're talking to her about what your districts need, she filters through all of that and she sends us back.
We talk to a director who talks to you.
Or you can talk to us, you can reach out directly. I would recommend you reach out to Managing Director, because at the end of the day, he signs off on the projects for a year before we get approvals from both HUD and council.
Yeah, I think it's interesting / a little bit confusing because it seems like it's a very unofficial process. And so I did meet with various departments who are all in support of what I was suggesting, but all of them said, I'm not the final decision maker on this. I think it's a good idea. We can try to talk through it. So who drops the hammer?
Managing Director.
And then with the current amount that you have left, the $7 million, it has to be spent by when?
April 30th.
Of this year.
Yeah.
And who's in discussions about that $7 million?
We're meeting about it every week.
And I'm guessing it's more pertinent, this $7 million, based upon what you submitted the plan for, correct?
Well, actually, we veered from this year's plan. We've already reprogrammed some funding. We've sent out 15-day letters to council members with regard to reprogramming. We're working on a facility acquisition right now through a nonprofit. Seeing if we can get that one done. That's about $2.6 million, as I mentioned last time during Committee on Budget. Fire is looking at certain fire equipment that can qualify for CDBG funding for neighborhoods that are in low to medium AMI groupings, and they're going to look at upgrading equipment because they've kind of fallen behind. So they're looking at that. And then Laura Thielen is helping us. Director Thielen is working on parking lot improvement type projects this year, about $1.6 million. So we have a lot of balls moving. Unfortunately, and this is fact, the multi-year park projects that we had scheduled they're all not moving as quickly as we want them to.
Interesting, because I do know that it can't be for actual construction, but I also think that I thought it was going to be used for affordable housing and homelessness. It sounds like it's going to be used for a plethora of things. In regards to your slides where it says purchasing and general services, current expenses, $500,000, procure services to provide relocation advisory assistance related to affordable housing. This is for past affordable housing acquisitions or future?
well, I would say it's passed because we acquired Evale Center. That's going to be the big focus there. So Evale Center was acquired in January of this year. We have, there's 30 tenants at that property that have to be relocated at the end of a 3-year term. So there's an interim phase where they can stay there for 3 years, kind of figure out where they are, and then at the same time, when they're ready to move, they can notify us. It can go one of both ways. They can decide to move with notice to us before the end of 3 years, or as we approach 3 years, we're going to be making the outreach to the tenants to help them to move out.
Understood. I just wanted to know if it was for
Yeah.
future acquisition or past, so it's a past one.
Yeah.
Chair, I just have 2 more questions, or do you want to cycle back?
Can I cycle back to you?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Council Chair Waters, followed by Councilmember Say, then Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much. Hey, I got a couple quick questions. If you could keep your answer really succinct so that the other council members can have a chance. I see that you're going to be spending over $500,000 on migrating the appraisal system to the iCloud-based performance enhancements. What can we expect from that?
Oh, wasn't that $150,000? Well,
I thought it was $500,000, but if it's only $150,000, that's even better.
That's for the real property tax system, right? You're talking about?
Yes, appraisal system.
So yeah, it's going to be moving both the appraisal platform and the treasury, so the billing and collecting platform, to the upgraded cloud platform of Tyler Technologies, and it's a move that we've been holding back on because in general our DIT department prefers locally based service systems, but we've been having issues, with the system in terms of running programs and reports on time. So I want to be succinct. So we expect that the reports we run will be processed faster, and we expect that there will be less downtime. We won't have situations where the system goes down and the system has to be rebooted.
I see. Okay, that's good. This is the first year we're using the TVR and B&B taxation categories. Have owners been appropriately notified that their RPT is increasing? And if so, how?
Through the notice process, and generally, like I mentioned earlier, there's about nearly 2,000 parcels that are in those new classes. They've registered, so that process notifies the owner that they're going to be taxed differently, and then we sent out notices already, right? In December, on December 15th, they got their notice of tax assessment. So they've been notified, yeah.
Oh, terrific. And you did answer the question, so they have registered, those 2,000?
Yes.
That's good. So we're talking about Ko'olina, Makai of Kuhio Ave, Kuilima, and then, of course, the 800 or so non-conforming.
Nooks, non-conforming
okay,
units.
Terrific. This deals with RPT also. I had an issue with Diamond Head residents who were victims of that fire, in Hibiscus, when there was where the 2 police officers were shot and killed. They're trying to rebuild their homes, but they're waiting for their permits from DPP, and it's been over a year. But your office has classified them as residential A, so their taxes went up from $6,500 a year to $22,000 a year. And remember, these are the victims of a fire. I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to help these folks so that they don't have to pay $22,000 a year as residential A.
I don't have, I know what happened, so I'm aware of the tragedy, but I'm not aware of the specifics. So yeah, we can talk about it offline. I'd be glad to work with our team.
Okay, I think it's a policy that when there's an empty lot, it's automatically residential A. But in this case, they're fire victims. So, okay, glad to work with you offline. What is the status of the empty homes RFP?
We had it, we were working to get it processed. The consultant issued last-minute questions on the general terms and conditions that go along with city contracts. So we're in the process right now of working with CORE to respond back. I think, I don't have specifics, but it's related to the indemnity clause and some other clauses. And yeah, we're trying to work that out. You know, if we can get through that, we should be able to bring that consultant on board to get along with the study.
So we haven't, I think we appropriated, and the administration asked for, and we appropriated $500,000 last
For
year.
funding, yeah.
Okay,
And
so that hasn't been spent.
it hasn't been spent, but we're really close, and we want to obligate it as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I note that in your budget request, you're asking for $20,000 for community outreach and education relating to the empty homes tax. So what is that about?
Probably the cost of doing, if needed, mail-outs and so on for the empty homes tax study.
I see.
Surveys, that kind of stuff, if needed. We may not need it, you know, I don't know, but we wanted to have that available should we have to do that.
Okay, I did have questions about CDBG, but I think they've already been covered. So last question. We need to find ways to address the high cost of living on Oahu for our local residents. Do you have anyone in your department that is looking at solutions to this problem?
The high cost of living on Oahu,
Yeah.
not specifically.
Okay.
Council
Is that
Chair.
something that you're interested in?
I think that's outside of our tool chest to do that kind of study. But we could, you know, it doesn't hurt to be a part of. So that is a problem. And it's multi-pronged, right? It's taxes, it's insurance, it's everything.
Yeah.
You know, living in paradise here. So yeah, I would say that that's not in our tool chest, but you know, we can share information we have, and we can work to help find a solution to that.
Okay, and actually I said last question, but one more question. So if our revenue is about 1.7 billion, and our budget is 3.6 billion, where are we making up the difference?
When you look at that revenue pie chart, you have things like restricted and unrestricted carryover, so that's fund balance. When I joined the city, I was kind of taken back because in private, your budget is revenues and expenses, right? For the city, it's revenues plus unencumbered, unassigned fund balance. Everything goes in to cover the budget. So everything's in there.
I think we have the same.
So that's a big chunk.
Right. So I like you think, oh my gosh, we're carrying over probably over $1 billion every year, and we count on that carryover. Otherwise, we couldn't balance our budget, right?
We count on it, yeah. And we also have collections from our special revenue funds, like for instance, you know, sewer. You know, they pay case charges, central administration expense charges, and we collect we collect other types of revenues from them to supplement the budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Say, followed by Councilmember Tupola.
Well, Director Kawano, thank you very much for your very poignant and very honest and straightforward answers. I went like this facially so that you don't say anything, so that my friends across the street can give us something. Now they're going to say we don't have to get anything based on what you just stated as far as our fund balance. But I have 3 questions for you. The first one was the Division of Accounting and Fiscal Services. Is this the division that will be helping EMS on the billing process?
EMS, as reported by Deputy Santi, they've outsourced the process.
Okay.
But we meet with them so that there's a connection between what they're doing in terms of their billing and collection processes to what we account for, you know, in the city's accounting system. So we meet with them on a regular basis. We also have to meet with them to budget, you know, accurately, because you know, it's a big change, billing and collecting your own health services
Well,
receivables.
I
So
think for Chair Cordero, like last week, the discussion we had, what was that $30 million question mark that was carryover or something? And that is a
30
concern that I have as far as if this budget will be balanced. My second question was basically, Director Kawano, Purchasing and General Services Division, everybody, as far as the departments have come to say that, oh, it's always purchasing that's holding up everything.
well, I'm going to back up my team. The truth is always in the middle. You know, there are times when, and I've seen it, I've seen documentation, we don't get things that at the time that they said they were sent in. We get work that's not complete. And, you know, it's in the middle because sometimes there are miscommunications where a department may do too much. But I think for the most part, you know, for the team that we have, they do a good job. And I do agree, though. I agree with the comments made by Councilmember Wire earlier that, you know, we need more capacity along with filling our vacant positions for that division.
Okay, thank you. And one final question for me was the Treasury Division. What is our projected percentage of income on the pool investments? Is it 5%, 6% of our pool investments? You know why I say this, Director Kawano? Simply put, if I was working for you and this is investment money, just put it in all the CDs that we have, 5% or more.
So currently, it's at about 5%. Funny you ask, we needed to calculate that for managing director. He asked us to provide him, you know, what are we currently earning? So it's about 5%. But, you know, we don't want to project that into next year because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't want to be short.
Now, if that's the mean, that's fine with me. It's just that, yeah, 5% is fine. But maybe next year you could say 3 or 4%. That way.
I hope so. Then we'll have monies that we can lapse into 26 because 26 is going to be it'll be a challenging budget in 26 because rail's going to expand into the next segment. And as I mentioned earlier, that's $50 million more we're going to have to fund. So yeah, if we can roll some into 26, that's good. That's good for us as a city.
Yep. So Director Kawano and Deputy Director Castro, thank you very much. Your staff has been excellent in the response to concerns that my office has. So I tip my hat off to all of them as far as their services that they are providing to the city and county of Honolulu. And I'm really happy that you do have a balanced budget, but next time, don't be so generous in telling my colleagues across the street that we have a surplus.
Our surplus is not very big. And keep in mind, most of that surplus is special funded. We cannot, a lot of it is sewer. We have to use it to do the consent decree work. We cannot use it for general use.
But thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair, for the second round. I just wanted to ask a question about the Liquor Commission. So on here, it stated that the budget was the $4,951,121. This is on the sheet in the binder, but how much revenue did they actually generate in the fiscal year? It was more than this, correct?
It's about that.
Oh, it's about the same?
Yeah, they balance their revenue projection with their appropriation. So
okay, so they didn't make a lot more than this then?
No, it's about right there. And in fact, they have policy whereby if they have extra, they go through a calculation every year. So if they have extra, they actually reduce the liquor charge that the licensees have to pay the following year.
Oh, interesting.
So they actually give some back to the licensees if they collect too much.
We discussed it in the past, possibly about them, using any extra to pay their own lawsuits. Are there any departments that actually pay their own lawsuits using any excess they have within their department?
Jeez, I think I don't know that answer because I can't speak for like Hart, for instance, or Board of Water Supply. But if you carve them out and we don't have perhaps managing director to respond or core to respond, I would think that we cover it. We cover everything. you know.
Oh, I understand you guys cover
across
everything.
government,
I think
yeah.
we were wondering independently of each department if they would care for their own lawsuits if they're the ones that incurred it. But it's okay. You said you didn't know. The next question I had was that I on and off had discussions with DPP about having an electronic payment processor for permitting, of which they may be working into their new system that they purchased. But there was some discussion that that power or decision laid within your department on whether or not they could have the payment processor that was electronic, as right now we just still accept checks and walk in for permitting. I think you guys might have electronic payment processor for other departments.
We have that for parks, as an example. We use what we call H&L Pay. We use it for the Oahu TAT. So it really depends. I wouldn't say that we would tell DPP they can't do it. They just have to be ready to do it. And you're right, actually, Council Member. I think the platform that they're procuring right now to replace their current permitting system, if we focus on that, will include a pay.
Yeah, we're excited
automated
about
pay
that.
collection system.
She did say that it would take a full 18 months to kind of get that released to the public as they continue to learn through the platform. Are you suggesting that it'd be fairly easy for them to use the payment processor?
With their new vendor that they're procuring?
No, like right
currently?
now, like I said, they said maybe it'll take 18 months before we start to have a forward-facing component of the new vendor because they have a lot of internal things they have to work out. So my question was, within that 18 months as we wait, is it not difficult to have an electronic payment processor?
If they're ready, and I think in a lot of cases they're not ready for it. It's a lot of work to do it, and you need the bandwidth. So. And they collect a lot of different revenues, right? They have different fines, penalties, and revenues that they collect. I'm not sure if they're ready. They haven't talked to me about it directly.
Well, that's good to know. Last question, and I apologize if someone asked this. You have 68 vacant positions, and you chose to abolish none. Is that because you are looking forward to filling all of them?
That's the goal. We want the positions budgeted so that when we post, we can say that the positions are budgeted. Yes. Of the 68, there's about 9 to 10 that are federally funded.
Understood.
That haven't been filled, that we need to assess. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Hi, Director. I have a few questions, and then after me will be Committee Vice Chair Wire. Okay, my first question is just to piggyback on that question by Councilmember Tapola. Well, one of them is a departmental staff executive assistant. Is that federally funded? The one that has been vacant for 13 years?
We don't have very many positions vacant for more than 7 years. If you go to the data we provided, there's just a few. Wait.
Okay, so we have one that's a departmental staff executive assistant, has been vacant for 13 years.
Okay, so you're talking about the EM5 position.
Yes.
Okay, that position has not been filled because we have not been able to, we haven't had the time to fill it. We've had so many things we've had to do. But Deputy Castro and I, we're going to focus on that. And our goal is to fill that position in 25. We need talent working with us to oversee some of the programs that we are responsible for, because there's just too much. You know, with the meetings we have to sit in with other departments, it's hard to directly manage programs the right way, and we need help. So we're going to focus on filling that position next year.
Okay, and I just have one last question. It's just a clarifying question. During your presentation on page 9, under, excuse me, the procurement of major equipment, you mentioned that it was that this amount of $10,777,600 is general funded, or isn't it?
It's
bond
general
funded?
funded and highway funded.
Okay, but these are not bond funds. Are they bond funds?
No. This is funded with cash.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
funded with cash.
Next up, we have Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And so be quick, but I just wanted to double check since we had you. And I know we pushed the public safety departments until Thursday, but one of the issues that's come up has been the community policing teams accessing funds, and I wasn't sure if you had any insight on that.
I'm not, I haven't been looped in. Let me check with my team.
Okay.
Have any of you been involved in that?
Okay, we'll follow up
Okay,
then.
not direct. None of us have been involved directly in that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that because I think that's part of the question too, is understanding where the processes can be updated and supported. And so, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director,
Yes.
back to my question for clarification. The source of fund is listed as bond funding in Bill 13, 2024. Will you work with us to correct the fund for the procurement of major equipment?
My mistake. I was corrected by one of the staff. It is bond funded.
Okay. So the bill does not need to be amended. And just for clarification.
No. In fact, that slide is correct. GI is general improvement bonds. HI is highway improvement bonds. So
Okay.
my bad.
During your presentation, you mentioned that it was general funded. And so
That's a mistake.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Members, are there any other questions for the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Director. Members, before I move forward to conclude the meeting, I would like to announce that, of course, we want to allow for our discussions to lead, our questions and to lead the discussions. So thank you very much for for the questions that you've provided to the 10 departments today. Tomorrow we have about 11 departments, and I would look forward to possibly recessing for lunch after Liquor Commission. So that is before Department Transportation Services. I would also like to note that I will be having to recess this meeting I'm gonna wait for 5 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, and then I will be able to reconvene from the recess at 9 a.m. on Thursday with a request. I have a request for Honolulu Fire Department to go first. Then I will have Emergency Services Department after, and then Honolulu Police Department. So I am allowing for the request of the public safety agencies to switch order. So once again, it's HFD, HESD, and then Honolulu Police Department. And then if we have further departments thereafter, I'll announce the order of that later on. Okay, yes, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Chair Cordero, tomorrow by lunchtime, we'll have a good idea, I think, on whether or not we're going to be able to accommodate everybody in the afternoon. And if we're not, similar to what happened today, there might be make a determination. I understand there were a lot of HFD, HPD, and emergency personnel here. And, I said, you should have asked. But just in case it happens tomorrow that we're behind, maybe we can let them know if in fact they're not going to be able to be heard tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. And I've also made a request to the city administration, if the departments don't have to come everyone that comes in isn't coming in at 8:30, so that's why I announced that I am planning to have a break so that DTS and everyone else after that will come in after our lunch break. And then also I have made the request to BFS based off of how our meetings went, if they can monitor the departments and then possibly come when the department before them arrives. However, I understand that there's travel time involved, so of course not just the department before, but seeing if there's a few departments ahead. With that, I appreciate you all. I really wanted to just make sure that we had time for everyone's questions, and I once again will be collating all the additional questions for the departments. I know I have questions I didn't get to ask, so we'll be doing so and asking for prompt response from the departments. Thank you very much. And at 5:02 p.m., I would like to call this meeting to recess.